will call to order the Architectural Board of Review for Tuesday, April 1st, 2025, and we will begin with roll call, please.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. I'll start with roll call. Vice Chair Whalen.
Here.
Board Member Anderson.
Here.
Board Member Black.
Here.
Board Member Noon.
Here.
Board Member Six.
Here.
Board Member Sovereign.
Here.
Chair Anderson.
Here.
We have quorum.
Great, and we will begin with general business, starting with public comment. So any member of the public may address the board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within its jurisdiction that is not on today's agenda.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. I'll start with in-person public comment. At this time, I do not have any slips for general public comment. If anyone wishes to make a general public comment, they may fill out a slip and bring it to me. At this time, I do not see anyone moving to do so, so we will turn our attention to virtual comment. And at this time, I do not have any hands raised for virtual general public comment, and we did not receive any written correspondence for general public comment. So at that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Anderson.
Okay, we will close general public comment and move on to the approval of the minutes from our full board meeting on March 17th.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. And yes, we only have one set of minutes to approve today, and these were posted online in advance of the meeting, so hopefully you all had a chance to review. But I will scroll through, and if someone can make a motion to approve, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, let's take a vote.
Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Whalen,
Yes?
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Six,
Yes.
Board Member Sovereign.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, moving on to item C, any announcements or requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items, and appeals?
No announcements from staff. Thank you.
Okay. Any subcommittee reports? All right, we will close general business and move on to item 1. This is a continued item, an in-progress review for Highway 101 HOV improvements. The proposal to construct segment 4E, 1.5 miles of high occupancy vehicle lanes in addition to highway improvements on the highway main line and ramps to improve vehicle recovery and sight distance. Segment 4E is the last segment of an 11-mile HOV lane project from Carpinteria to Santa Barbara. Improvements also include reconfiguration of the Cabrillo Boulevard interchange to the standard right-hand side on and off ramps, 2 new bridges over Cabrillo Boulevard, replacement of existing roadway pavement, installation of sound walls and retaining walls, and upgrades to drainage, signage, lighting, and barriers. All improvements are within the existing public right-of-way. Segment 4E South extends from approximately Olive Mill Road to Hermosia Road. Segment 4E North extends from approximately Hermosia Road to half mile north of the Cabrillo Boulevard northbound on-ramp. The Planning Commission granted approval of a CDP for the project on December 21st, 2023. This is in progress review requested for segment 4E North only. Project was granted project design approval on April 15th, 2024. Segment 4E South was granted final approval on May 13th, 2024, and review after final approval on December 9th, 2024. Welcome back. If you would like to introduce yourselves and walk us through the updates, you'll have 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Chair Anderson and board members. Fred Luna with the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments.
Christine Anderson.
Yeah, get the mic.
Christine Anderson with Mark Thomas, the consultant, part of the consultant team.
And Zach Staviglia with Mark Thomas, also working with SBK on the project.
All right, thank you. So as you saw in the summary for today's project is that there was a single permit for the entire segment 4E, and then we came to this body for final approvals for the 4E South, which started construction, and then we did have a review after final on one particular item. Today, our focus is on segment 4E North. So Us being here means that we're making additional progress on that segment. We just recently completed what we call our 100% plan package. So that's, and in doing so and leading up to that point, there were some things that came through our constructability review that we required some modifications to what had been previously presented to this body. And so we wanted to bring that to your attention, in addition to comments that were made last April when we had the kind of cohesive look at the entire project. And so today our objective through this in-progress review is to address those. It's not, we anticipate there might be some additional ones, so we've informed city staff as well that we might be back in the next couple of months as we look to wrap this up. Our overall goal being that we want to get this project funded in early next year and then start construction in March of '26. So that's our objective right now. And I'll hand it over to Christine and Zach, and they'll walk you through the presentation.
Thank you, Fred. I've got a lot in front of me. I wanted to start by showing you a little before and after, just to make sure that we're all clear on some of the changes that have taken place or the updates. If you recall, the comment in last April was to align the columns on the bridge structure and to explore column capitals. And also we got some comments on the slope paving. So this is the before picture, and the comment here was to explore a mix of cobble sizes and to use smaller, lower boulders. So now here's what we did. I wanted to show you, so focusing on the column placement first of all, is that we've aligned the columns with the bridge structure. This now makes it so that we have 4 columns on each structure, each side. So, 8 columns on each side of the cabrillo. Each column is 4 foot by 4 foot, but 2 of the columns on each structure, so 4 columns on each side, are skewed to match the structures, the structure alignment. We've also added the column capitals, similar to cacique, so hopefully you all like that. For the slope paving, we did randomize the placement of flatter boulders within this. It's really difficult to see, and I'll show you a little bit of an update on the next slide. We also used mixed sizes of the Santa Barbara sandstone. The slope paving varies between 2.5 to 1 to 4 to 1 along there, and that's really to maintain a consistent top slope so that there's like a consistency in the amount of exposed abutment wall on the back. The slope paving also continues between the structures to an infill wall that you can see back here. That infill wall is necessary for access control onto the freeway. And we also continued that slope paving to avoid a flat space that could be used for inappropriate purposes. So just diving into a little bit of the materials and to update this a little bit, the previous approval was to use Mission Creek cobble for the truck apron, which is this one at the Hot Springs roundabout, and Santa Barbara sandstone for splitter islands and parkway strips and raised medians. If the two came together, we might use boulders to separate the two. We've since done some research and want to bring this back for review and a potential update. You can see the slope paving selection and the recommended specification for the Santa Barbara sandstone slope paving here. That's a more detailed look at that after constructability review. All of our construction folks seem to think that this will work out quite nicely. The splitter islands and parkway strips and those raised medians have not changed from the Santa Barbara sandstone currently, other than one. The truck apron, however, what we'd like to do is, due to the proximity, is to reference the new Los Patos roundabout. There's some key differences here. The Los Patos grout depth is different, and it's better for truck turning and vehicle traction. The Los Patos roundabout also has the truck apron is sealed, so it kind of gives that little glossy approach to it. And the cobbles are slightly larger. This same cobble treatment was also used in the splitter islands and raised medians. So that just wanted to highlight that as a difference between the Los Patos roundabout area and this one, so you can be familiar with what's going on. On the next slide, I get a little bit more detail and kind of graphically show where everything is. So this lighter color is the truck apron paving, that Los Patos roundabout truck apron paving that would continue through this raised median here, as we've currently shown it. Santa Barbara sandstone is this more medium tan texture in the parkway strips in these raised medians out here. And then this darker tan color, darker brown color is the slope paving, which is that custom Santa Barbara sandstone mixed. I wanted to also highlight on this slide that the truck apron had to widen out, so you see that the planter area has actually gotten smaller. The planted area of the roundabout itself had to get smaller. And the board may also recall that request to use boulders between the transition between the truck apron paving and splitter island paving materials. And what we've proposed here is just to match that Los Patos roundabout for consistency. So again, I want to focus on the viewpoint location here. On this slide and the next slide, we're in the exact same spot. It wasn't changed, but we had to make the refinements due to truck turning movements and also vehicle queuing in this roundabout area. So the update here, basically this roundabout actually pulls back, and due to that truck turning movement, the truck apron had to get larger, reducing the size of that planted roundabout, but it is just behind us and on the left here. So if you could turn around and look over your shoulder, it'd be right there. This view also shows that proposed use of that Los Patos roundabout material for the truck apron and also continuing into the raised median. For this slide, the board selected a Mission Creek block texture form liner for the retaining walls on both sides, both the UP tracks and on the structure side, with a cap at the top of the walls. That's actually also acting as a curb for this barrier treatment. The bridge structure cap and curb was always approved as plain concrete. So it's that plain concrete color. So to update you on this one shows some changes to the geometry. You can see some additional planting that's happened here and the straightening of the sidewalk and crosswalk here. But I want to pay special attention to the retaining wall caps and the curbs. The curb along the top of the structure here, due to constructability, we had to add a horizontal chamfer. So it's the same size, but it will have this horizontal chamfer between the curb and the top cap. And that's to not allow for visibility of some construction seams and things like that that are back behind that area. Hidden behind it, if you will. We've also added a pilaster, which is barely visible back here, but a pilaster to end the wing wall. This is the wing wall here, but that pilaster basically is proud of the wing wall face to separate the texture of the Mission Creek form liner with that straight, flat face of the structural wall. And if we didn't do that, that would actually, the Mission Creek texture would actually be proud of the rest of the structural wall and would be kind of a weird transition there. So we thought that was a good addition. You'll also see that the curb along the top was originally, we had its tan to match the retaining wall back in here and over here. But for consistency, we've actually maintained that curb now as plain gray concrete throughout to make a through line so it didn't transition midway through to another color. There's a lot to talk about with that, but that's basically mimicking the Olive Mill look. Olive Mill has this stained post, stained top rail, and plain gray concrete curb and cap. So it's very consistent with Olive Mill, also consistent with other places along the corridor. This one is just bringing back for an update only. So this, we've made some modifications for pedestrian safety as well as truck turning and design review by city staff. Some key highlights here is that this splitter island has gotten smaller and shorter. So less planting space overall, but probably a good addition. Big changes over here, which I think are actually very good, which is we've pulled the retaining wall back against the Old Coast Highway sidewalk, which allows for more planting in the front of the retaining wall, and it actually shortens the wall quite a bit, which makes it much better. We've also shortened this wall so that it's just 12 inches above the Old Coast Highway sidewalk, as well as the stairwell there with wrought iron to match the existing on the top. And that allows for better visibility of the pedestrians as they're coming down going down or going up that stairwell. And we've also added this 5-foot planter strip along along this side of the right side of the picture here, to be consistent with the other side of the street, and it also helps to, for safety and security of the pedestrians, giving them a better visibility and for the safety and comfort of those pedestrians. This one I just wanted to bring back again for the update, just to note that there's about the screening on the right-hand side of this slide, as well as the barrier cap and curb, so you can see this in a little bit more detail, the barrier cap here when we get to the next slide, as well as the maintenance vehicle pull-out location, this one right here. On the update, the key features here are that the maintenance vehicle pullout has actually pulled up the ramp, so it's actually just on my right-hand shoulder in this slide. So it's further away, allowing for more planting down towards the roundabout, which I thought was a good addition. We've also had to add a bioswale for treatment of runoff from the city source. And the amount of landscape behind that bioswale would be reduced, but we would want to try to maintain the screening of the rest of the Cabrillo and Hot Springs Road there. So that would be done with more shrubs and vines. But you can also see the barrier curb at the top here, and something to talk about is whether or not we want that to be that same texture of the Mission Creek retaining wall form liner, or whether we want that to be plain, similar to what's on the bridge. And then I'm almost done here, but due to flood control requirements, it mandates use of an open barrier at the north end of this segment near the bird refuge. So you can see that here in this purple area. What we're proposing here is to change that from 2 guardrails on either side to using a Natina stained Thri-beam, which I'm good at saying, not so good at saying what it actually is.
It's just a thicker version of the metal beam guardrail that you see along the side of the freeway. Typically, that metal beam guardrail is 12 inches thick. In the median of the freeway, it's called Thri-beam. It's just a thicker section of guardrail, and it's to prevent vehicles from crossing over into the opposite side of the freeway. If you drive along the corridor right now, you'll see Thri-beam, and it's a standard application along freeways.
But we're proposing to use this to be consistent with the rest of the corridor. It's also being used in the Montecito segment. But it would tie in just to the north, just to the north of this, like right in here to the existing galvanized metal beam guardrail that's right there at the Salina Street
You
off-ramp.
hit your 15, but can you wrap up in a few minutes?
Yes,
Oh,
in fact,
looks
I'm on
like
my
that
last
goes.
slide. So I just put this up here just for your, to update, the various items, basically so that you can kind of go back and give us some feedback on these 8 items, and we can go back, I can take questions, whatever you'd like.
Awesome, thank you so much. Okay, let's open up public comment for item number 1.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. I'll start with in-person public comment. At this time, I do not have any slips for this project. However, if anyone wishes to make a comment on this project, they may fill one out and bring it to me. I see no one in the audience moving to do so, and we did not receive any written correspondence for this item. And turning our attention to virtual attendance, there are no hands raised for this item. So at that, I will turn it back over to you, Chair Anderson.
Thank you. We will close public comment for item 1 and go to questions from the board. Board Member 6, would you like to start?
Just one small question. I think it's great that you're able to pull back the Coast Village Road retaining wall. What does a view from Coast Village Road? Is it just a sidewalk and then the iron guardrail, or are there any planting opportunities, or what does it look like?
There's currently no planting on the Coast Village side. The sidewalk is only a foot back from the curb, so all of the planting that you see is in that space behind the sidewalk. So as Christine mentioned, I think this actually will show more landscaping from the Coast Village side of the road as well, because you'll see it growing up over the sidewalk. I think overall this will be an improvement to the planting that's out there.
So you're anticipating the planting coming up from the off-ramp side or on-ramp side over into the iron guardrails?
Correct.
Yes,
That's
okay.
right.
And that condition doesn't last very long, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, once the retaining wall, in addition to setting it back, we also were able to reduce the length of it quite a bit. So right where the wall is showing to end, beyond that point, it's just planting area. It's just embankment that would be planted.
Brings out, yeah, okay, thanks.
Vice Chair Whalen?
Thank you, Chair Anderson. Just a couple of things. Am I correct in assuming that the Los Patos Way exit goes away?
That's correct.
Right. And I know it's not a part of your project, but the Southern Pacific Railroad undercrossing gets replaced, but that's not part of your project?
That's correct.
Okay. The one that you can answer, Ms. Anderson, you talked about the columns getting skewered. Did you mean that they're no longer square, that they're parallelograms?
Slightly, yes.
Slightly.
So, yeah, so these let's see if I can get to the best slide for this. You can kind of maybe tell from here in plan view, the columns underneath the structure, these are square, but these columns, because of the skew of the roadway above, would actually be, one side would be a different
Aligned with the road, yes.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you for those clarifications. Those are my only questions.
Board Member Black?
I guess the only question that came to mind was the fencing that you show on top of the retaining walls, that's going to match the existing wrought iron that's there now?
That's correct.
Is that right?
For this location, the fencing on top of the retaining walls would match the existing wrought iron.
And currently, there's one stair access from the roadway up to Old San Marcos Road. So, but it's farther or closer to the Hot Springs roundabout, is it not? But
Yes.
now it's shown farther down.
That's right.
that right?
I think the existing one is approximately, if I could approximate it, it's probably right about where the hand is, right there.
Got it.
Or so, but it's now going to be shifted down further away from the viewer. And if you know that one, there's also a ramp, like a scissor ramp.
Yep.
That ramp will no longer be there. The ramp now would, a accessible route would actually be to walk, to come all the way around.
Yeah, and just, I would add that the stairs align with the crosswalk going across the ramp, so that's the reason why the stairs are moving. The whole area gets reconfigured, so the idea was that those stairs would be located directly adjacent to where the crosswalk is.
I see. And I can't really tell, but I'm assuming that in the planter for this, I'll call it a teardrop roundabout there, but it's going to have a raised sandstone wall, not unlike what you have, well, at Hot Springs and now at Los Patos. You're gonna have
Yes,
that?
for the roundabout itself.
Yes.
Exactly the same as if
Okay.
I can go back to this slide, you can
Yeah,
see.
right there.
The intent is for it to look like Hot Springs, Los Patos.
Got it.
Similar.
Okay, those are my only questions. Thanks.
Board Member Noon?
Just a quick clarification, I apologize if I missed it. I think I followed all the items that you wanted us to approve or look at, but I didn't follow the cap that you're referring to, the color and texture.
Right. Let me get to that slide because that is a good one. So you can see previously what was intended was that we would use the Mission Creek form liner texture on the wall plus on the back of this curb cap, if you will, with that tan color. The intent here for consistency is to now change that cap color to that plain gray concrete so that it's a consistent gray stripe to go all the way across the bridge as well.
And are those set pieces then, like a precast, or is that poured in place?
Poured in place.
Okay.
And so then the question is whether or not the board actually favors this to be plain gray concrete or still with that Mission Creek texture.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Board Member Sovereign?
No questions.
Board Member Anderson?
What type of columns are these?
The bridge columns?
Yeah.
Yeah, the bridge columns are all concrete columns. The ones underneath the bridge are 4x4 square, and like we were talking about before, the ones on the edge of the structure are just slightly skewed.
I mean, where did the design come from?
We talked about it a little bit. The design came from looking at the Cacique Bridge and then also just other structures within the area, but mainly pulling inspiration from the Cacique undercrossing.
Okay. And is the elliptical arch a structural or a decorative feature?
The arch in the bridge is structural.
Okay. I think that's my only questions.
Okay. I don't have any questions. Follow-up
I
questions?
have follow-up. I'm confused on the coloration of the railings versus, and before they were gray, and this image, they were gray. Are the middle medians in the freeway yellow all the way through the project, and therefore you're doing yellow to match from a view from the traveler?
Christine, can you go to the bridge, the one that shows the revised,
Sorry.
up.
Other
It
way.
shows the bridge change right here. Oh, that one right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so these barriers just quickly they all need to be federally tested. There's a MASH compliance is what it's referred to. They're all federally tested barriers. And there's a certain type of construction method that all has to be done. And for this, there's no way to have that integral color on the curb section of the
Yeah, I
portion of the
understand.
barrier where it connects to the bridge. So if you look throughout the corridor, you'll see in all of these barriers, that curb section is plain, just gray concrete. And then it's been applied that all of the posts and railing are colored. And so to be consistent with that, we were thinking that where the retaining walls extend, we would keep that same gray band going through there. That's up for discussion, but that was just the recommendation.
Thank you.
And you are correct too, that before the posts were shown as plain gray concrete as well. But this is, during our constructability review, we realized that this is the only portion in the entire segment that has plain gray concrete
Okay.
posts.
Another question, there was quite a discussion on the rock sizes and the slope of the underbridge.
Yeah.
If you go back to your material board, is there, I'm not quite getting a sense of what you're doing there in the imagery, but is the size of the rock at the higher upper right-hand way up there, is that a size can be considered?
Yes, so what the intent is that we would use about 10% of the slope paving surface would be covered with these, what I'm calling flat sandstone boulders. This is a very custom mix, but I've vetted this through our constructability review. But flat sandstone boulders, so 2 feet by 3 feet with no more than 12 inches protruding above the surface. And those would just be randomly placed in the slope paving. And then the remainder of the cobble would all be grouted in place, with 50% being 6 to 8 inches, 25% 8 to 10 inches, and 25% 4 to 6 inches.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Anderson, I had a follow-up question. Could you go back to the last illustration you had? Very minor clarification. I know that you're presenting the northbound, but if I read that, no, not that one. No. You showed an illustration for the southbound on-ramp, and I got confused why we're looking at that now. So that's the railroad track on the right with the underpass just out of sight.
That's correct.
So I just wanted, that's for my own edification, that I'm looking at a southbound, but we're really talking about the northbound. And you did this because of the southbound bridge, right? The railing and the tinting and.
I think we have 2 illustrations.
Yeah.
So this one shows the southbound on-ramp. This shows the relation of the bridge to the retaining walls that would be directly adjacent to the railroad project. Christine, if you go to the northbound off-ramp, which is this rendering, so we had both the southbound and the northbound shown.
Yeah.
Weren't the railings different on each of these, and you're asking for our,
No, they are both the same.
okay, very good, that's all I have.
I'm sorry, one more.
Okay. Your mic's not on.
The cap that we're talking about, whether it's gray or sandstone color, is that occur everywhere on all retaining walls disassociated with the either side of the bridge? Or
The intent is whatever you decide, we will do. We will
Goes
make it happen.
everywhere.
The intent is that they would all be the same. They would all
Yeah.
match.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I will just, real quickly, I will just say that on the bridge, that curb cannot be colored. Yeah.
All right, before we go into comments, do we have to make a motion for this, or can we?
No motion is needed for in-progress
Great.
review.
Okay, so I think can we go to your list of 8?
Yes.
And maybe we'll just go through one at a time, and we'll make comments on each one. So the first one is the Cabrillo structure column placement and capital additions. Does anyone have any comments on that revision?
I congratulate you on achieving our objective. I think those are just fine. And they directly copy the undercrossing to the south, right, at Summerlin or nearby.
Cacique is the best, is the most
Thank you.
appropriate.
Very well rendered.
Thank you.
Any additional comments for the columns?
Are we going over this list overall then?
We're gonna do one at a time.
Oh, okay.
So we're just doing number 1 right now.
Okay.
So if there's
If
any.
you don't hear from anybody, it's accepted, correct?
Correct. So positive feedback on item 1. Okay.
Well,
I'd-
I want to add, isn't one of the columns somehow the geometry is kind
Skewed, yes.
Yeah, actually, it would be 8 of the columns. One face of those 8 columns would be skewed. So every one of the columns that's on the exterior face of the bridge would be skewed to align with the face of the structure.
of, oh, I see. Is that structural?
The skew is not structural. That's purely aesthetic. The columns just need to be 4x4 square, but rather than having it not line up with the edge of the bridge, that's why we're skewing that exterior face.
I see. Okay.
Okay. Let's go to item 2. Okay, confirm slope paving material selection. Anyone have any comments on that?
I support the modified mix that you propose.
Yeah,
Same.
that's what I
Okay.
like the fact that it's only 10% of the larger one, because I think the problem we had before, the before picture that you had, was this, there was just too much of the larger boulders, and it just seemed very erratic to me, but
Yeah. Okay, so the board supports the modified paving selection for the slope paving. Okay, item 3, confirm truck apron material selection.
that's good.
Agree. Anyone disagree with their selection? Okay, so the board confirms the presented apron material selection. Okay, number 4, confirm splitter island material selection, which is the same as the truck apron. Is that correct?
Yeah, specifically in that raised median underneath the Cabrillo structure.
Okay.
Yes,
And that would match the Los Patos roundabout.
that's correct.
Okay, very good. I would support that.
Same. Anyone not support? Okay. So the board would support the splitter island material selection as presented. Okay. Number 5, confirm retaining wall cap texture and color. All right, let's start with color since it sounds like it has to be gray. Okay.
No, wait. The
Right?
retaining
The
wall
bridge,
cap.
the bridge
Oh, the
component needs to
bridge
be
is
gray.
separate. The retaining wall, okay, sorry, can we go
That's
to
right.
that rendering for the,
Yes.
one of the ramps?
Let's see, that was
Southbound?
probably the best one.
That's not the bridge?
That,
That's
that-
the retaining wall.
That's the
That's the
retaining wall.
retaining wall. If you
If you
want to see the
go,
bridge.
go back,
Oop, Sorry.
The one that shows the transition is good, Christine.
right
somehow,
there.
Yeah.
So the structure, anything below the post in this rendering would have to be gray. It's just the way it's poured integrally with the bridge. On the retaining walls, there is some more flexibility. So for example, on the right side of the screen where you see the retaining wall
Yeah.
adjacent to the railroad, that could be the same color as the retaining wall. There's nothing that would prevent that.
And we're just talking about the retaining wall cap right now
We're specifically talking about the retaining wall cap.
at the bridge.
Yes, and if we, my thinking on this, when I did this rendering, was we want this cap to be continuous gray so that it didn't suddenly transition to another color. And then by doing it that way, we're also doing that everywhere else.
In your comment, you state color and texture, so there is a change in texture. There's a profile on the bridge that doesn't continue on the retaining wall.
That's correct. The profile on the bridge is just plain gray concrete, no texture. But on the original selection of this board as well as the DRT before, is that the Mission Creek form liner texture would also go to the back of that curb. So then there's also that question, but maybe we can take each one.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, so let's start with the retaining wall cap color as gray.
Chair Anderson,
Yes.
if I may, I would think it would be more honest to have all the retaining walls either separate from the bridge structure and either side of the bridge structure to match the stain of the sandstone walls below, but the bridge be different and
Okay.
accent the bridge as such, to be more honest. So I would propose a change in color.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, all right. We have, okay, so then let's go back to number 4. So the board would prefer the texture and color of the retaining wall caps to match the retaining wall below
In the tan color.
in the tan color. Okay. Wait, that was number 5.
It was 5, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Number 6, confirm bridge barrier staining. Can you
Yes.
remind us?
That was, previously the rendering showed the posts as being gray.
Oh, thank you.
And everywhere else along the corridor, the post is that tan color, and then the beam is that wood color.
Yeah.
What, tan? Yeah.
I would support those.
Okay, so the board would move forward with tan for number 6. Number 7, confirm landscape change around Cabrillo roundabout and northbound on and off ramps.
So that's simply the pulling back of this retaining wall and adding more landscape. We'll be coming back for another landscape round, but you can see that I've actually proposed some street trees in that parkway strip.
Yes, I think.
Yeah, it's nice having that parkway.
Okay. Yes, the board supports the modifications to the landscape. And number 8, confirm use of Natina stained Thri-beam in transition between 4E segment and existing Milpas segment. We didn't really see a photo, but I think
Yeah, that's just this.
it's just that location matches other locations, correct?
Correct. All of the guard railing along the corridor so far has been Natina stained, which is that patinaed color. And so this would be just a continuation of that up until the north end of the project.
Okay, I think the board would also support that option. Okay, did we get all 8?
7 out of 8 ain't bad.
7 out of 8, yeah. Okay.
Pretty good
well
batting
then,
average.
I think that's all we need, so
Okay.
thank you, and we will see you back here for final.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Likewise.
Okay. Okay, all right. Okay, we will move on to item number 2. It's a new item, it's a new item for project design approval. 418 North Milpas Street and 915 to 923 East Gutierrez Street. This project involves the voluntary lot merger of 418 North Milpas and 915 through 923 East Gutierrez Street to create 41,477 square foot lot, demolition of all on-site improvements, including 5,850 square feet of non-residential floor area, 8 residential units, and 13 trees, and construction of a new 4-story, 108,698 square foot gross mixed-use building with 90 residential rental units and 850 square feet net of commercial space. The project includes 29 studio units, 46 one-bedroom units, and 15 two-bedroom units, ranging in size from 350 square feet to 974 square feet, with an average unit size of 632 square feet. 9 units would be restricted to very low-income households, and 6 units would be restricted to moderate-income households. The project includes 65 residential parking stalls, 3 commercial parking stalls, and 1 loading parking stall for smaller-size delivery service vehicles. Vehicular access to the site is from East Gutierrez Street. The project is proposed under the city's average unit size density incentive program and state density bonus law. A preliminary housing development SB 330 pre-application was submitted on October 25th, 2023 to lock in development standards and fees in effect at that time. The project also qualifies as a builder's remedy project. The project is subject to no net loss findings per Government Code 65863. Staff has determined that remaining sites identified in the suitable sites inventory are adequate to meet the city's remaining RHNA for the planning period by income category. Project design approval is requested. Project requires compliance with the project compatibility findings, urban design guidelines, and Haley-Milpas guidelines. Planning Commission reviewed the project for concept review and comments only on March 20th, 2025. Previous designs were reviewed by ABR as one-time pre-application consultations on July 16th, 2018. Under PLN 2018-00738 and on August 22nd, 2022 under pre-2022 00116. And I'm sure before we jump in, we have some things to talk about.
Yes, good morning, board. Good morning. Good afternoon, board members. Tava Ostringer, City Attorney's Office. I just wanted to, I know the members of the public are really concerned about the height and scale of the building. but unfortunately, under the Housing Accountability Act, we can't do anything that would reduce the density that is allowed for. So as you're kind of giving your comments and tweaking into the members of the public so they understand, we're kind of set at the size of the building, but work your magic. And Planning Commission had some helpful comments, so hopefully you were able to review those. If you have any questions, I'm here till 4:45, happy to jump in.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, if I might, Chair Anderson, Ms. Ostranger, in our project summary here, it talks about no net loss findings. That's specifically what you're referring to, that the project as proposed can't be reduced in what ways?
So it's actually a little different. The no net loss refers to the fact that in our housing element, we have, the site has a particular unit count, and they're not proposing to have the full units. So I'm referring to the Housing Accountability Act, which says we can't deny the project unless there's health and safety issues, and we can't reduce its density. If we reduce its density, that's basically the same as denying it.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then just real quick, before we get started, just to the public, if you could just be mindful to keep your comments to yourself, because we can hear a lot of the chitter chatter up here, so it gets a little distracting. So we thank you.
I have a question for staff. What if, and legal counsel, what if the board cannot find the project compatibility findings? What is the various scenarios that would follow?
The applicant could potentially file a writ, which is basically asking the court to determine if we did something wrong, basically that we violated the Housing Accountability Act. If the court were to find that we did violate it by denying the project or reducing it, they would order us to come back here and do a do-over. If we acted in bad faith, then we'd be liable for, I think it's $5,000 or $10,000 for every unit that we've denied. 5 or 10, 15, 15.
So what would a do-over look like if it came back to the board?
Basically, the court would just tell you, you have to approve the project. We made a mistake and you couldn't reduce the density. You know, if you were to cut off a story, that would clearly reduce the density.
Okay.
All right. Well, would the applicant like to come up? Please introduce yourselves. You have 15 minutes after you say your name. Make sure the mic's on. Yep.
I'm Jan Hockhauser, Hockhauser Bladder Architecture and Planning. Good afternoon to everybody.
Hi, I'm Beth Collins. Hi, Beth Collins. I'm a land use attorney representing the project. Good afternoon. Okay, I'm going to dive in since the clock is ticking. Milpas. Well, let's start first with housing. This is from the city's housing element in the 5th cycle, which ended in 2023, and the city fell short in providing housing. And I'm just going through these numbers to just kind of remind everyone kind of why we're here and to address the elephant in the room, which is kind of the fairly awkward thing that we're having a hearing when we have this kind of overlay of all these state laws, and the city process and the state laws frankly don't completely jive at this point. And so I'm just acknowledging that it might be awkward from some of us as we move forward. But why the state laws? It's because of this. Unfortunately, all over the state of California, we haven't been able to produce enough housing because of our historic processes. Here's our 6th cycle. Well, let's go back. If you notice here, some of the areas that are really underproducing are the very low and the moderates. You can see here we need 842 last round, and we need over 800 in the moderate space. And then here in the 6th cycle, you can see we're still underperforming. We're only, partially into the 6th cycle, but we are still underperforming in the very low and the moderate. and we have quite a few units that we need to produce. So the city, in formulating its housing element, actually identified the AUD program as a way to help you enhance your housing production. So it's part of the housing element. It's a mechanism that this city chose to increase the housing production. And part of the AUD process identified the Milpas area for that AUD. So that's part of why we're here. It's part of why this project, because the city is actually designated through its own policies that we should come here and do an AUD project. We're allowed to do 63 units per acre. We're allowed higher floor area ratios. We have flexibility in zoning standards. We have expedited design review process, and that's not the state. That's the city's own process that they have adopted in an effort to try to produce more housing. Here's a picture of the Milpas corridor, bright red, because of the AUD overlay. By the way, we have produced housing projects. They're not all just along Milpas. They're all across the city as of May 22. This is from the city's website. So let's get to this project. The existing zoning is CG. It only has 8 units right now on it, 8 cottages. So it is underutilized for housing. We do have a very strict requirements from both the state and the city to take care of the tenants that are there. We are providing replacement housing, and you'll see that we are providing more deed-restricted housing where we have none now. It's at least not deed-restricted as to affordability. The proposed project's 90 units. It's got a variety. It's all the way 2-bedroom, 1-bedrooms, and studios. Right now, the project proposes 9 very low. We're doing voluntarily, additionally, 6 moderate, and just since the ABR, the Planning Commission hearing, we have added 1 workforce unit as well. And that's all voluntary. That is deed-restricted, affordable units that will last for decades. We're also over-parking the project. When you apply the standards of half a parking space, we are over-parking it. So here's a quick rundown. So existing on the site, just 8 units, all of them are 1-bedroom, no deed-restricted affordable, and we only have 8 parking units. We're proposing 90 units, all varied sizes. We're voluntarily doing 6 moderate and 1 workforce on top of the 9 very low. We're over-parking it by 20 to try to decrease pressure on the neighborhood and make sure we are sufficiently serving our tenants. We're also under, we have a height of 50, which is actually under the 60 that could be allowed under the AUD program. But we also have state bonus density that we can use the concessions and waivers because of the affordable that we're providing. And so we have all of that. And we could build more. We could max out with an additional 20 units. We could take away parking, but we're not doing that. In fact, as you heard staff mention, we also are a builder's remedy project, which means that we are automatically deemed consistent with all city general plan and zoning. It means that we don't have to comply with city general plan and zoning, but we're not taking advantage of that. We are consistent.
The city has issued a letter to that effect.
Yes, the city has issued a letter saying that we are consistent with all of the city's general plan and zoning objective standards. So we aren't taking advantage of the builder's remedy. We could. But this kind of part of the larger context of where we're here today. Now, all that being said, we are trying to make a beautiful place that fits and honors the site and honors the neighborhood. And I will leave that to Jan to walk through.
Thank you, Beth. I appreciate that. So I'd like to start off to kind of deliver, I guess, a best way to refer to it is a sense of reality to what this project is about to the board. We went to great lengths in the work with staff in preparation for these meetings to deliver very carefully prepared view simulations from vantage points all around the site. In addition, the Planning Commission recently asked that we include additional vantage points in the neighborhood to the northeast, so that from any vantage point you can perceive, this board can perceive what the project is. And on top of that, we engaged a surveyor who does mobile laser scanning to drive up and down Milpa Street, east and west on Gutierrez Street, to accurately make a point cloud of the context for this project. And we then inserted the model. So to start off today's presentation, what I'd like to do is run that view simulation. It's a animated mobile perception, and this has, we underscore its accuracy and reality. So here you're looking north on Milpa Street, right in the center lane, driving towards the project. The new Starbucks on the right there, on the corner, that's looking east on Gutierrez Street. This facade is across from the CVS parking lot. And then as we move east on Gutierrez, the project has exceptional setbacks, more than is required. It meets all the step backs and solar ordinances required that have been in place for many years in Santa Barbara, addressing residential adjacencies. In addition, it essentially complies with, not that we need to, but it complies with the objective design standards for buildings developed adjacent residential neighborhoods. So completing this one exhibit for you, I believe we're going to drive up Milpa Street now. Rusty's Pizza Place is there, and they're contemplating a mixed-use project as well. Here's the frontage, the facade, classic Mediterranean, and the adjacent commercial, the north facade of our project, which is right on the property line. And we've addressed changes to that per the commission, saying we could see what we could do to enliven that, even though it's a zero infill property line. So now if I can ask staff to go to the actual simulation views, which are inserted into photographs, I can give you the sheet numbers.
To the applicant, you do have those plans available on the applicant laptop there. It's just the other
Okay,
tab
so-
in Adobe.
So it's the A510 series.
A5. Here?
You want to go scroll through to A5.10. These are the shadow studies. And you're a little bit more right there. So these slides show the various vantage points. If you can see, ask the board members to look closely at the Google Earth aerial. You can see the locations around the site. And the next slide adds the additional locations that were asked for by members of the public. And then the next series of slides actually shows what is seen from each of those locations. That is across the intersection at Milpas and Gutierrez with the 7-Eleven. Was a 7-Eleven, is now a Starbucks in the foreground. Go to the next slide, please. And then this is looking east down Gutierrez. This is looking up Frederick Street. Reddick, sorry, towards the frontage of the building there. Next slide, please. And then this is looking down Milpas, and you can see the north facade there. This is before we kind of energize a little bit with what we could do in terms of fenestration and articulation, but it shows what you see from that intersection to the north. Next slide, please, Beth. And then this is going west on Gutierrez Street, and you can see up on the upper left of these exhibits, you can see the existing situation and the proposed situation. And then scrolling right along, and this is from the back of the CVS parking lot. And then this is looking again north on Milpas Street. Next slide, please. And there should be, there should be another series in there, Beth, if we go back maybe to the beginning, if you go the other way. The exhibits that show the intersections to the northeast in the neighborhood.
you see this, Jan?
Yeah, I'm not seeing them in the set.
We want to go back to the PowerPoint and talk about the changes.
Yeah, let's do that. So if you can scroll to the A3 series sheets.
Okay. This one? That's
You'll start with
I have
A3.
one to the right, yes,
A3
that's
1A.
one.
Okay, there we go. This is where I left off.
Okay, so this is the north elevation facing, that's adjacent right on the property line, and there's a building in front of this. This is not what the public would see, but we energized and added articulation to the gable elements. There's a rendered slide of this. If you scroll along, there it is there. Any openings on this side need to be fire shuttered because of the building code, and you can see the block out of the building in the foreground there. And then if you scroll further, Beth, this is the elevation facing the neighborhood to the north, and you can see the terracing back of the building and the significant vegetation that's existing and added to that elevation. Scrolling right along, this is the Gutierrez frontage with both existing and proposed vegetation in place. From the last time the ABR saw this elevation, we've terraced it back, articulated the massing. The elements and the articulations, even though we don't have to be, they're consistent with the objective design standards. And moving right along. And then this is the Milpas Street elevation. The only portion that's directly on Milpas Street is the far left of this drawing, which is that 3-arched arcade. The rest of the elevation is all back behind the parking lot. And the new Starbucks to the right. As I indicated, there's plans for a new structure in the parking lot and Rusty's Pizza Place, and then that little parking lot would remain.
You want to talk about the changes?
Yeah. So some of the comments, I've addressed one of them already, which had to do with the articulation on the north elevation, breaking it up so it wasn't a sheer massive wall. I showed you that. We refined the tower element. The Planning Commission actually liked the tower element, but they said study its mass, so we narrowed it and articulated it a little bit more carefully. The other things that they asked for had to do with landscaping, but they didn't review the landscaping. So if you scroll to the last exhibit, in the set, the L1 sheets, we could talk about the landscaping.
Do you need about, how many more minutes do you think you'll need?
3.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be good to have that flexibility. Thank you.
So you say L.
Yeah, that's existing trees. And then I would say, when you scrutinize the landscape exhibits, I'd like you to look at the amount of vegetation proposed to the neighborhood to the east, the utilization of the parkway and frontages, the planting pockets along Gutierrez. Milpas has very limited opportunity, as that's a commercial, very limited setback with just some small planters. And then interior to the project, the Planning Commission appreciated the interior courtyards. They like the terracing, so that's largely addressed in the overall massing concept of the design. All the detailing is replete, consistent, in consistency with the objective design standards, traditional Mediterranean Spanish detailing, barrel-tiled roofs, cornices, arcades, ironwork, decorative tile work. So all those elements, I believe, are consistent with, the Milpas Haley guidelines, all the guidelines the city publishes for this kind of architecture. The other thing that was addressed, is the livability of the units. And we double-checked that. We think, like, all the units exceed any standards for light and air. Almost the most minimal ones are double the code standards for window exposure. Many of them have great orientations and vantage points. If you can go to the floor plans, Beth, and go backwards a little bit to the earlier A2 exhibits.
You're back in the plans.
The front of the package.
Chair Anderson, I think we're approaching the additional 3 minutes.
You get 2 more minutes.
You got it. I can do it within that time frame. So on the A2.4 is a good one, A2.3, if you can get me there.
3, there we go. Sorry, this is hitting my mouse. Okay, there you go.
And that's 03. I need A2 point.
Okay, sorry, I'm a lawyer. God, clearly.
Okay, so here's a typical floor plate, and as you can see, all the units are designed to maximize exposure to courtyards or the views to the east, to the west. As you get up to the upper stories, of course, the views get even better. And if you go to the next slide, you can show the retreat of the massing on the east there, on Gutierrez Street, and of course, a major retreat for a public terrace. There's lots of open space exceeding the requirements for open space. I think, I'm confident we've addressed the standards and the guidelines, and I want to reiterate before I close how modest this is relative to all the guidelines. The average unit size can be 811. It's significantly under that. We do have the protection of state law to add density, add unit size, but the client and the project proponent is proposing that this project be a good one for the city. And I'm really sorry that we didn't have those other view simulations, because they underscore how de minimis from those neighborhood the views to the project are.
I think they're in the PowerPoint.
Well, do we have a minute to get to that?
These are the views. These are the views.
Well, maybe they're going to ask for it, so let's just
Great.
use those 30 seconds to breathe.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, we will open up public comment for item number 2.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. I'll start with in-person public comment. I do have quite a few slips for public comment, so I'm going to call your name by threes. If you could please approach the podium. You will each have 2 minutes to speak, but all 3 people come up at the same time so we can keep this moving along. So our first 3 names will be Jose Gallegos, Martha Fragosa, and Paul Fletcher.
Good afternoon. Jose Arturo Gallegos, born here in Santa Barbara. Grew up there just 2 blocks north of this project on Mulandario Street, 300 block, and later on the 400 block. I have fond memories of this old neighborhood, and this project is just not compatible for the neighborhood. Now, just catty-corner from where it's going to be Starbucks, there's an auto shop there on there. Next to it is a building. It's been there forever, and I remember this building growing up. There's only 2 floors. I don't have a problem if this development will be anywhere from 2 to 3 floors. I think 3 would be maximum. The design itself, okay, it is somewhat Mediterranean, but to me, it really reminds me more of a mental hospital, minus, and I'm not trying to be humorous or sarcastic here, but it reminds me of a mental hospital minus a high fence and razor wire around it. And I saw one when I was living in Phoenix, Arizona, the mental hospital there. This is what it reminds me of. This is just not right for the neighborhood. It's just too massive. It's a monstrous thing. So no, I do not approve this project. 2 to 3, and that's it. Floors, and yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Martha Fergosa. I live at 823 East Haley Street. I have lived there for 45 years, so I can say this is my neighborhood. I want to know, where you have 90 units and only 65 parking spots, where is everybody else going to park and their second vehicles? these huge development housings, and I say that because there's another one that's coming on the 500 block of Milpas, and there's another one on the 600 block at Capitol Hardware. They all are oversized without adequate parking. Right now, I live next to Haley. I live next to Jack in the Box at Haley Milpas, so I'm right there. Right now, we currently have to do the parking shuffle so that we don't lose the one spot that we have on the street. Where are these new tenants going to park? It's naive to think that these people are not going to have a car. If they can afford these rental rates, they're going to have multiple cars. Milpas is the only corridor on the east side. It's 2 lanes with a bike path for half and 4 lanes on the other half. We already have a high accident rate. I've seen probably the aftermath of hundreds. This is going to greatly add to the issue. There is one side street that has good lighting, and that's Haley. All the other small side streets that are perpendicular to Milpas don't have any good lighting. You are going to have people parking blocks away where they live, clogging up the neighborhoods more, but walking home in the dark. That is not a good idea, not on the east side. The east side does not have the infrastructure to handle all these huge developments that these people are trying to cram on the east side. They don't care because they don't have to live there. We live there. Please don't kill the east side with all these huge developments without adequate parking. The east side infrastructure is not adequate to handle this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Paul Fletcher here. I know it's April Fool's, but I kind of feel weird today in the fact that I was here last time and I'm saying the same thing over again. And that is, as a 40-year resident, this project, I'm all for building on private property, and I get it on the housing, but don't force a project like this on Milpas. You've done it, or the city's done it in other areas on Milpas Street, and like the previous speaker said, parking is horrendous. Aliso Street got messed up because of the city traffic. They don't take into account that people have 2 cars, and the east side is crazy with parking. After being here for 40 years, how it's damaged that whole area is mind-boggling. So it's not compatible. It's damaging the view. I was a printer and publisher for history books in this area, and all I can say is maybe you could read some Walker Tompkins books about the way it used to be here and try to protect Santa Barbara as best we can. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next 3 speakers, Andy Zworen, Christy Barros, and Wara Gutierrez, please approach the podium. You will each have 2 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon. Just a question for this lawyer. Are you saying this meeting is moot because if they don't approve the project, is that okay to ask you that? I wonder if I heard incorrectly.
She can answer once your 2 minutes is up. Once your 2 minutes is up, she can answer.
Thank you. I just didn't understand, so, yeah. And thank you guys, because I know that, you denied the review of the 7-Eleven, was it the 7-Eleven Milpas? And then City Council overrode you guys. Yeah, so please, thank you for sticking up and ensuring that new projects are appropriate for their location and surroundings. This is part of your mandate, and obviously this project is not suitable for this location. And come on, let's get real. Like everybody says, there is no parking. There is no, when people, I'm curious what's going to happen when Starbucks open and you're you're coming south on Milpas and you're going to turn left into Starbucks, which is maybe not 170 feet from the intersection at Gutierrez. So people are going to be turning into Starbucks, and then they're going to want to turn left into Gutierrez. How's that going to happen? It's not going to happen. I've contacted Mike Krzyzewski from the city. Unfortunately, got no reply whether or not there's going to be a left turn arrow at Gutierrez. If you're coming south on Milpas, that would be handy. But there's just no way that a project of this magnitude and this degree, this extent, can possibly fit with this neighborhood. And if you follow your mandate, there's no way you can approve of this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would council like to respond?
Yeah. To the board. Yes, so this board has purview over the aesthetics, so they can ask the applicant to change and to make the building prettier, but they can't reduce the density in the project, so they can't required that the applicant reduce a story, because that would reduce the density and the number of units that this building is allowed to have per our
But they
zoning
can,
code.
but they can deny the application, or they can't, I mean, is it moot? Can they not, are you saying they can't
They can
deny?
only deny the project if there's health and safety concerns that can't be
So this whole meeting
mitigated.
is moot, basically?
Well, hopefully we'll get a better project. These board members are really good at making projects
they-
better, but
Yeah, amen, but what I'm hearing you saying is, they, unless there's a health and safety issue, there's nothing this board can actually do.
correct.
Tough space, guys.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. I guess I'm just another neighbor with a comment that won't matter, but the only thing we agree on here is that we need more housing and we need more affordable housing. I live on the east side. I've been here since 1965. The size, bulk, and scale is crazy. The compatibility with the neighborhood doesn't exist. The design is institutional in nature. It doesn't fit the character of the neighborhood. I know you have to have story poles. Where are they? Let's get them up so the rest of the neighborhood can see. And talking about the elephant in the room, the only people who want this project are the developers. We don't want it. It doesn't fit, and it's only benefiting the pocketbooks of the developers. That's my opinion.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jawar. And then if there's anybody who will be mostly affected by this project, it will be me. I'm directly behind that project. So this is the back of the project by Gutierrez Street, and this is Milpas. My house is directly over here. So this 4-story building, they're saying that they did the shadow study. I live there. There's a tree here that's approximately four stories high, and throughout the day, the shadow of that tree overshadows my property and the neighboring property. So you can imagine, they're saying that they studied the rotation of the sun. I live there every single day, so I know when the sun comes and when the sun comes out. And it will be, if that tree is overshadowing my property, how much so of our property. And also, my property is sandwiched between that property and another neighbor over here. My next door neighbor over here is about 1 foot up, higher in my property. When there's torrential rain, the water from this house goes directly to our house. I don't anticipate that they're going to build this property lower than mine. And so if that happens, all the water that's coming from this property will fill in here. My property tends to be sloping down. It's not, the water that will fill in here will not go towards the street because it's lower. And so what's going to happen if there's a building over here, all the water that's coming from here will pull in here. There's no way of that water going out. And then another thing, I think this is being used as masquerade for catering to a low-income family. It says nine units for low-income family. Guess what? Real estate a pattern would be they'll be increasing the rent every year, if not every year, every so often. There's no such a thing as decreasing rent rate. And so those 9 units will eventually be unreachable for low-income families 10, 15 years down the line, so they're not going to be catering for low-income or moderate-income families. And the parking, just imagine, let's say, for example, 90 units with, let's say, half of that will be with 2 cars, so that 45 times 2, that will be 90. And they only have 69 parking units. Where do you think would these people be parking? They're going to be parking around the street, taking some spots for the neighborhood that are living there. And also the traffic. If it's already traffic right now, how much more adding more people living in the area with small space to move around? Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next 3 commenters, Miss Ann Hefferman, Britta Bartels, and Natasha Todorovic. If you could please approach, you will have 2 minutes to speak.
Hello, thank you. My name's Ann Hefferman. I'm a 30-year resident of the East Side, Milpas area, and I'm here to oppose this development on 418 North Milpas and the adjoining area on East Gutierrez. My objections have to do with the overall size and proportion as they relate to the surrounding neighborhood. The design is incompatible in scale, creating an oppressive and overbearing aesthetic and negative impact to the neighbors. Specifically, I'd like to point to the 10 or so parcels that are directly affected. For instance, the slide that showed winter solstice shadows in the afternoon. The height of the building puts structures on the northeastern side in complete shadow in the afternoon. The slide showing the structure just peeking above the homes on Aliso Street, I find this slide to be misleading. If one were to stand in the backyards of these homes, what you would see instead of open sky is the mass of the structure and the windows that have the ability to intrude upon privacy. And finally, again, the insanity of the ratio of parking spaces to residential units. The solution to this particular design failure is to scale the entire project back to a reasonable size, one that a neighborhood of homes, businesses, and schools already impacted by the loss of parking with the change in circulation patterns and bulb outs on Alisos can accommodate, not to mention the increased traffic flow with the new Starbucks. Until there is a better solution for the parking shortages in the neighborhood, this design doesn't work. So my message to the developers is to check your profit margin against your good conscience and scale it back. Just because you can build big, it doesn't mean you should. Thank you.
Thank you.
I live at 918 East Haley Street with my husband since 2003. We moved into the back house, which is the two-story townhome. It has 2 units. Unit B is the rental unit that is facing the wall. And we have had beautiful sunlight coming in all these years. People love to live in that unit because of the morning sunlight. It comes in very early. I looked at the shadow study, and I'm not willing to wait until 9 o'clock to have the light coming into the living room where there is a nice area to sit and have breakfast. People get up early. They don't want to get up in a dungeon and then have the light coming in while they're at work. So the bay window is huge, and it'll be covered by the nasty, ugly wall that will have to be somehow moved back away from our wall. I cannot see us having 6 or maybe 8 feet away an ugly wall that will totally block off the view. We will have no more sunlight. We are installing 8 solar panels on that roof, and we're not waiting until 9 o'clock to get them charging. And in my opinion, it's violating the solar setback law. In regards to the AUD, if it's really affordable housing, 9 units out of 90 is 10%. So all the other ones besides the 6 that are supposedly like the ones you're putting in as a kind gesture, they will not be affordable as much as other units maybe. And people, they are not paying so much rent for such a hole. These are cubby holes. I mean, who wants to live in a 2-car garage-sized studio and probably pay like $3,500, I'm guessing, because studios right now go for a lot of money. We charged $3,500 for a 3-bedroom with 1,200 square feet and off-street parking, and we have people saying it's under price. And I can imagine that you will charge way more than what we think it should be. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I live at 920 East Gutierrez, so I am right next to this project. And let me just see if I can recap this. So our applicant is saying, we're doing you a favor. It's going to be so much smaller. It's going to be so much better, and you're going to like it. And don't worry about the size. It's a lot smaller than you think it's going to be. That's what I keep hearing from you guys. And we can make it so much bigger because the state lets us. And then Ms. Ostringer comes in and says, strong arms the ABR and says, basically you have no choice. The public is here. Let me inform the public of what these laws are. Well, I think that when you are trying to run this city, your responsibility is not for following and doing exactly what the state says. Your job is to help the residents in this city, to protect the quality of our lives, to make the city better. Your job is not to start threatening and strong-arming the ABR. I don't appreciate that. They have a job here to do, and walking in here and saying, you know, it's going to cost $5,000 per unit if you guys stand in the way of that, you should be ashamed of yourself. And 4 floors in a little area of bungalows. You guys aren't doing us a favor. Yeah, you're doing it a little bit smaller. Let's see if we could get this approved. It's a horrific design. You're taking advantage of what the state is trying to do to this beautiful city, and it's going to be destroyed because of opportunistic programs and projects like this. It's unconscionable. Our lives are going to be messed up. And what Britta did not say, she has toxic mold because of a project that went in that's creating shadow in her home. And this project is going to create more shadow, creating toxic mold for her. Stop this project, and we will be appealing it.
Thank you.
Next members will be Sebastian Aldana Jr., Yolanda Perez, and Natalia Giovanni.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sebastian Aldana Jr. I'm a native to Santa Barbara. I had the honor to live when it wasn't densed. It was very enjoyable. You used to be able to play football on the street back then. But I have a few articles here from a Newshawk. The very first one, 2018, more than 70 residents attended. Same thing was said. This is massive. This thing is massive. It's not even a building. It says this thing is massive. It's huge. It doesn't fit. First time around, 84 rooms as far as a hotel, 27 apartments. They were worried about the seniors. It says right here, the board members blasted the project and told the property owner and architect to go back to step one, basically go back to the drawing board. Board members saying it's overwhelming. The area is a modern little neighborhood that has survived 100 years. That's all coming to an end. Cunningham, this project is outlandishly big. It's way too big, and it is completely out of character for the neighborhood. I think you got a long ways to go. But then they come back 4 years later, same thing, 90 units. So it's just out of place. That's Richard 6. You mentioned about a neighborhood health and safety issue with all these additional cars and nowhere for them to be parked. You're causing a neighborhood health and safety issue. It's already the number 2 spot for collisions on bicycles. You're going to have more cars, and you're creating a neighborhood health and safety issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Yolanda Perez. I'm a native of Santa Barbara. My family owns a number 4 rental homes on the 400 block of Aliso Street. Prior to the city, I believe about 2 years ago, installing a 4-way stop on Aliso and Gutierrez Street, my tenants, both the elderly tenants that I have and the young tenants that I have, who would walk their children to Franklin School with their stroller, many times nearly got hit by speeding cars down Gutierrez Street. So the city, very wisely, I believe, installed a 4-way stop. However, that does not permit a turn left on all 4 areas of Aliso Street. So now I speak to the safety issue of the singular entrance and exit of this massive building. It'll have one, from what I understand, one entrance and exit on Gutierrez Street. It competing with the entrance and exit of Starbucks, the same with CVS across the street. The rendering of the slides that you saw, I don't know what time of the day that was, because I drive down Gutierrez Street every single day, multiple times. There are cars parked on both sides of Gutierrez Street. Yes, it is 2 lanes, but we're talking very narrow lanes after all the cars are parked on that block of Gutierrez Street where that proposed entrance and exit is going to be. If the vehicles, what are we talking about, 65, let's say, probably way more when you consider Starbucks and CVS competing for that. If they turn left, they can only go up. They cannot turn then left on Aliso Street to go somewhere else. If they turn right, again, they would go down Gutierrez Street. Mind you, Gutierrez Street becomes a one-way street after Milpas. That needs to be said. That you need to understand that whole block, that whole area of how the traffic is. But even more important, the pedestrians. That is a very, very busy area for the children walking to the junior high and to the high school, for the people who are walking their kids to Franklin Elementary School, and just for the elderly who don't have cars who walk to the Trader Joe's, for example, or down the street to Smart and Final. It's a very, very busy pedestrian area. And so I really urge you to take a look at that one singular vehicle entrance and exit. I believe it is a very, very, it's just such a safety issue. I cannot stress that enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we announce the 2 minutes so people stay on? I mean, okay.
Good afternoon, Chair and board members. This Legoland project before you today has no place in the East Side District. With 4 stories, limited parking availability, compromised livability issues, and a cold institutionalized architectural style, this is precedent-setting for a district that, according to the Milpas-Haley Design Guidelines, is considered Hispanic Pueblo. Currently, these setback requirements are not acceptable because, according to these guidelines, it should result in a visual interest for the passerby. Unfortunately, that has not been achieved in this project, and as a result, this developer should be required to set back his project substantially in order to create a more welcoming and green effect on the Milpas and Gutierrez streets. Furthermore, due to the magnitude of this project, it clearly lacks a soul and human quality, which must mirror the qualities of this developer, because only a developer without a soul would create such wreckage for a community. This lack of rhythm, proportion, and scale with the surrounding buildings and neighborhood does not provide any design continuity or compatibility. As a business owner directly situated next door to this property, I would be forced to stare at 2 towering prison walls that would not only diminish more of my natural light, but offer no view of texture or architectural elements. So I would strenuously urge this board to require that this developer make more of a positive and effective contribution to the East Side District. Our residents and business community members deserve the right to enjoy and appreciate majestic views, live without traffic congestion and parking unavailability, and most
thank you. That's 2
importantly,
minutes.
live with minimal impacts to one's quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next 3, Mr. Grammel, Ms. Kane, and Mr. Moreno, please approach the podium, and please remember you have 2 minutes to speak.
Hello, everybody. I may be a weird one because I'm actually a real estate developer, so they can all kick me outside. And be doing a lot of market rate stuff, and then the last 10 years doing affordable housing. So just those people who know, I'm assuming, is it deed restricted, I'm assuming? So it's tax credit stuff or whatever. So just so everybody knows who's been complaining about rates going up, that's it's set by the government and is all controlled. There's nothing that they can do. It's on deed. So there were a few things I want to make comment on just because I'm in the game. I know it. the space that comes out to Mill Pass, I would ask you to consider that some kind of retail space at the street level, keeping continuity along the street. It's already bad enough with tire shops and things that don't quite allow for continuity of people walking by. Also, I do feel that it is somewhat institutional look in places, the design. The part that really bothers me is, and by the way, I live on Coda, are the parking requirements. Obviously half or whatever it is, more than half per unit is very low. And certainly those streets like Haley, I have some property on Haley, the cars up there, it's full cars all the way along. So I would ask you to consider things like zip cars, giving bus passes to your low-income tenants and things like that. So it's more of an operational thing, but I think that really would help as opposed to having lots of cars parked everywhere. And why the city doesn't allow, for example, Rusty's Pizza and Starbucks have a little wall in between them, and why people can't start to think of people have different operating hours. Why the heck can't we just clear out a lot of these obstructions and talk to each other about potentially, because I worry about visitors and parking like that, trying to get parking spaces. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board. Thank you for listening to all of us. I'm a longtime local resident, and I know a number of homeowners in the area, and I have family that live in the area. I'm also a realtor, and I'm all for housing and growing in our community. However, being a longtime resident and knowing the area intimately, I remember when there was Los Amita Gardens right behind Rusty's Pizza. I am concerned regarding the location, and as we all know, in real estate, location is key. And the architectural and infrastructure for the size of the units and meeting the community's needs as far as traffic is concerned and walkability. And my concern is also for the local residents that are already residing in the neighborhood for a number of reasons, for the sound, the development issues as far as bringing in construction and contractors, and the noise for the residents, as well as those that you're proposing to live in your buildings, the size and the proposed project for outdoor living, and the location, I don't think would suit the size of your project. And I'm not saying I'm not for building in our area, but I think the location wouldn't be sound for everybody unless it was smaller, or considering other means of outdoor living space and I went for loss of words. Transportation, thank you, yes. So that's it, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, board members. I live right behind the project. I have a 2-story building there. I'm going to be living in the shadows. You talk about health and safety, that's it. I will be living in a dungeon. My renters will be living in a dungeon. I own 3 properties. The front house on Haley Street, 918 East Haley, is a single 2-story house. My mom bought that back in 1969. I bought my brothers and sisters off of it. I developed the units back there thinking it'll be a nice place to retire and live the rest of my life there. Now I'm going to be in a dungeon. I have 2 stories on this street. I'm going to have a 4-story behind me that I'm going to live in the shadows. You talk about health. I will have mold in my house. I have it already for the units on the east side. They do a study from Milpas to Gutierrez, but they fail to do one on Milpas, on Haley Street or Aliso, facing what the rest of the units or the residents in that area will see. I recommend that you don't approve this. send it back to the board and downsize it so it's compatible to the neighborhood and to everybody else that lives in that area. Don't let me allow me to live in a dungeon where my health will be an issue, like the city said. If it comes to it, I will sue the city, the architect review board, for invasion of my privacy. They'll have a staircase going right back 6 feet from the people that live in the 2 units behind me. It would look into their patios, their 2 bedrooms, the kitchen, and the office. Would you want to live there? I don't think so.
2 minutes.
You're telling me we don't care.
Thank you. Your 2
Thank
minutes
you.
are up. Thank you.
We will have Mary Robles, and anyone else who has a slip, please turn it in at this time.
Thank you for letting me speak. I just want to let you know what the word out is on the street. ¿Qué están pensando? What are you thinking? Are you thinking of us? We don't think so. So we're very sad about that. So you're leaving a neighborhood, the east side, very, very unhappy about what's going to happen to the neighborhood. We have issues now. We have issues that businesses are having a hard time. This is not going to help us. This is not going to help our little it's cute, the east side. Please don't ruin it with this. Very unattractive. No lo queremos. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the slips that I have for in-person public comment. At this time, I'm going to turn my attention to virtual comment. And we have Mr. Leonard and Ms. Brooks. I will unmute Mr. Leonard. You will have 2 minutes to speak. Mr. Leonard?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Hi, thank you so much. I just want to say thanks so much to the board. You guys do really important work. I appreciate that. I grew up on Aliso Street. I currently don't own a car, and I do want this project to be built. The developers have already made an insane amount of concessions. The building has a lower height, a lower unit count, and a higher number of parking spaces than required, and that's not even with them engaging builder's remedy, which could make this project, frankly, much less attractive and much worse for the community. So I just want to say that they are doing a lot. They're not required to exceed 10% affordable, and to deny it at this point would be dishonorable even if it were possible. I just want to talk to this community like we have spent so much time not allowing any other type of housing that we can't actually stop stuff like this from happening now. So it's really part of our responsibility to look at the past few decades of not building housing, and this is what we have now. So if the citizens of this community want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees for the same conclusion, that's disappointing to me. Personally, I this isn't a perfect project. I don't think it's the most beautiful building I've ever seen, but I certainly don't think it's fundamentally ugly, and I still want it to be built. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Ms. Brooks. I'm going to unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. Ms. Brooks?
Yes, thank you. My name is Morel Brooks, and I'm speaking for Citizens Planning Association.
Ms. Brooks?
There
we go.
I'm sorry. Okay, Morel Brooks for Citizens Planning Association. We have been participating in city planning issues since 1960. Many of our members live in the city of Santa Barbara, and several of them live in the east side. Milpa's Gutierrez proposal is unlike any present development on the east side. It does not satisfy the basic requirements of any of the 3 sets of required guidelines. Local residents must have a way to see and understand what is proposed for their neighborhood. Story poles are essential here for understanding the massive size of this project. The planning department says story poles and other visual aids are required in order to make findings regarding appropriate size, bulk, scale, and neighborhood compatibility. The actual story poles can begin to tell the story of what's being planned in this neighborhood. The existing guidelines do anticipate growth and development, but this is enormous in size, bulk, and scale. It's incompatible to what's now in the area, blocking in the sunlight. The urban design guidelines say important principles are to protect and enhance the existing human scale character. That's not here. We agree with number 16 of the Planning Commission's draft motion. There is concern about the livability of these units in terms of light and air. So the Commission has recommended that the ABR study the architecture and the detailing in an effort to de-institutionalize the project design. Your ABR oversight is very important, and CPA thanks you for your work. In a closing comment, I want to, CPA has been following what's going on throughout the state in terms of these builder remedy projects. And every community is hearing the same argument from the legal professionals. You know, you can't do this, you can't do that. We have been keeping an eye on the existing lawsuits that have been brought, and not one of them has been acted upon. There are lawsuits out there, but and we are hoping that there will be some kind of proposition coming up next year to do away with this.
Great, thank you.
You know, please don't be cowed.
Okay, at that ends our virtual comment, and we will move on to the letters that we did receive. We received several. We start with Ms. Steve Hogerman, Andy Zwern, Natasha Todorovic, Craig Minus, Concerned Citizens, Yoar Gutierrez, Santurnino Moreno, Danny Moreno, Fantastic Family 4 Gutierrez, Britta Bartels, and Danny Moreno, and Marcel and Mary Ellen Brooks. And at that, I will turn it back over to you, Chair Anderson.
Thank you. We will close public comment. I think we might take a 2-minute recess, if that's okay.
Yes.
going to re-adjourn our meeting here. If everyone can settle down.
And Chair Anderson, I need to leave, but I
Okay.
wanted to let the board know your options.
Okay, if everyone can be quiet, please.
You can grant PDA today with specific conditions. We can continue to March 14th for another hearing. April 15th. Or if the applicant wants to give us a one-time 90-day extension, we could put this out farther to give the applicant more time to address the board's comments. So those are the three options that you'll be considering today.
Great, thank you. Okay, and before we go to questions from the board, the applicant would like to address a few of the public comments. So you have 3 minutes.
First, on the issue of the views from Haley, we were able to find the slide, and you can see here, this is the view from Haley. This was requested from the Planning Commission, or by the Planning Commission. We also have the view here from Aliso Street, which was requested from the Planning Commission. Here's another view from the intersection. You can barely see the building. Again, zoomed in. And then as to the story poles, there have been multiple requests on story poles. We provided the 3D renderings, the photo simulations, the animation, in an effort to really give even more complete picture than the story poles. The problem with the story poles, frankly, we have existing tenants. Putting them up is very costly and time-consuming, and in some ways it's misleading. Also, given the fact that the height is the height, we have a state bonus density concession. There's no changes that can be made to the height, bulk, and scale. Nonetheless, as I said, we have designed the project to honor the neighborhood and try, I mean, you can see from these that you can't see the building from many of these views. So therefore, we'd ask not to have the story poles. We also do believe we can use one of our state bonus density concessions also on the story poles. But we ask that you all don't ask for the story poles for those reasons. And then on the affordable, I just want to clarify, it is deed restricted, 55 years. It's managed by the county housing authority. People with a certain income level, based on the number of people in their house, they set the rents every year. It's not the developer that would be able to set, or the owner of the property that would be able to set those rents. Those are going to be deed restricted, affordable, and there will be an extra 7 on top of the 9, very low, that we are using to get the state with a bonus density. And we're also here for any other questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with Vice Chair Whalen with questions.
Yes, I do have a few. Mr. Hockhauser, you talked about open space. Is that strictly at the podium level, or could you call up an image and carefully sketch out which areas comprise the open space?
We can go to the floor plans on the A2 series exhibits. Those are the floor plans, and there are several significant upper story open spaces.
Pardon the interruption
Is
to
your
the applicant.
microphone
Please turn on your
on
mic.
there? Yes.
Sorry. So the A2 series exhibits in the drawing set. Keep going. You'll get there. There you go. So this is the grade level that shows the parking, the setback on the east side, and the 3 units that happen to be on grade level. The yellow spaces, in deference to your question, are amenity spaces, lobby, activity rooms, mail room, bike storage. We overdo it on the bike parking. A commercial space on the Milpas frontage, and 2 residential lobbies, an entry point on Gutierrez and a pedestrian entry point on the Milpas Street frontage there on the northwest corner. If you go scroll,
So
please.
specifically, there are no open spaces on the ground floor?
On the ground floor, it is just the open space of the east side setback, which go back a slide, Beth, all the way. One more, please. Yeah, right there, between the property line and the building face, you can see the pathway in the rust orange color on the right. Yes, that's all open space. And I call the board's attention to the significant setbacks from the apartment buildings to the northeast corner there. It's more than double the required setback at the grade level there. So 16 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet. Going up now, advance please to A23. One more. That's the podium level back. I'm sorry, Beth. That shows the orange colors there are the podium level open spaces. And then if we go up to A24, you can see the blue is the network of circulation. But here, the hatched areas, the stippled white hatched areas, is a big public roof terrace. And then there's one on the south along Gutierrez, where we stepped the building back from the last presentation. The smaller ones are all private balcony spaces, and then there's another major one there to the right, Beth, right there, that looks at the Riviera views and back into the courtyard.
Very good. That was very helpful. And where would you establish your major utility boxes, backflows?
So on the grade
back
level
on the
plan,
ground level.
Yeah, there are mechanical rooms. You can see in that southeast corner there, there's a transformer space at the very southeast corner of the building, and then there are utility rooms and trash rooms right in the interior parking corner there at the southeast, Dennis, right there.
All right. And we've yet to see a formal landscape plan. That will come subsequently.
No, there's one.
There was
there's one in
there.
the presentation.
Oh, that's right. You did get into that at the end. Let's see. I want to go to the tower element. That's A 2.6. It's your image number 19. Now, where does the tower occur on each of these plans? I couldn't quite locate it in space in my mind.
It incorporates the staircase, the major staircase off of the Gutierrez Street lobby and the elevator core that goes up through all the floors. And then if we scroll to A2, back to A2.4, you can see it in the roof plan there. Advance, please, one more slide to A2.5. Okay. The gray square at the lower left-hand corner of the building site, to the left, Beth, right there. That's
Right
the
there.
tower element that
All right.
extends up, capturing that vertical circulation.
Thank you. It just appears farther back in some of the 3D renderings, but it's really much closer to the street than I thought.
And then, Dennis, if I could take the opportunity here to show all the roof articulation, and that I wanted to point out to the board that the extent of the roof that exceeds the 45-foot height limit that we're asking the bonus density exception for is only 13% of the site area.
All right. Continuing on, you really didn't have any, you had some sections through the building, but nothing that really went through the site that showed the adjacent properties and street front, did you?
I think we've got some good ones in that regard. There's a series of slides that show the property lines and the frontages on A4.1, A4.2.
Yes.
There we go.
These were helpful, but what I was looking for is the relationship of neighborhood buildings and streets. That last one, go back one, that one answers one question, is that the courtyard slot. I'll get back to that.
I might add that this is going through the parking lots of Rusty's.
Yes.
And then to the neighborhood property line in the back, and it shows the solar step back. But also, if one looks at the Google Earth imagery and the site planning, which I think is in the set, there's significant additional setback to the neighborhood structures. They're very removed from that property line.
Well, it would be helpful to see the adjacent building off of Gutierrez on this one. But moving along, how is the garage ventilated? Is it natural or mechanical?
Because of the zero property line, you're not allowed to ventilate on the north. On the east, we have residential units and amenity spaces, and of course lobbies and rental offices on Gutierrez. So it has to be, to meet code, it needs to be mechanically
So it's
ventilated.
mechanically ventilated. Those are all my questions. Thank you, Chair Anders.
Board Member Six.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. I wish the legal counsel was still here because the issue of livability has come up. I think Ms. Winscombe of the Planning Commission sent that issue to us also, but it seems like livability is another one of those ABR guidelines tools that has been ground down to mean nothing. So we won't get an answer on that. The next questions do not address the big white elephant, whether that's figurative or literal, in the room, but need to be asked anyway. Are you aware of the Milpas-Haley guidelines that recommend to provide a minimum of 20 feet from frontages?
I am, but those guidelines are very old, and this is consistent with current guidelines, and in fact...
current guidelines, but not in the area that you're in?
Throughout the city, as a matter of fact.
On the north elevation, can we go there?
That would be Exhibit A32A.
So on the far left-hand side of this elevation, you have setbacks and lower floors and so forth. And they're they have a character that you aren't able to render in the rest of the elevation. Is the fact that the very left hand,
I don't understand that.
Well, most of the balance of the building, except for that very left-hand side, is very flat and right up against the property line. But the last portion to the very left-hand side has setbacks and roof tiles and so forth. Is the reason that is set back in lower floors and so forth because the solar ordinance effects of those neighboring residentials?
Well, that entire frontage from the Gutierrez Street on the left all the way to the very right, or what I would call the north property line, experiences that what the Planning Commission liked is the wedding cake effect of the building. And so what you're seeing on the very left, Commissioner Six, is the stepping back from the Gutierrez frontage. So that's why you see the hipped roofs, and the tower element is way on the other side of the Gutierrez frontage.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about right at this elevation, on the north elevation.
Yeah,
the purple tree there demarks a differentiation between flat, plain, unarticulated buildings and a very articulated remaining portion to the left. Why? I guess what I'm driving at is why can't some of the, and that's in the back of the project away from Milpas and away from Haley, why can't that have more of these plain flat walls and trade some of that setback into a balance of the elevation?
You know, perhaps we go back to A32 and remove this vegetation from the slide so you can see the treatment all along the back. So the residential units have a pretty,
I'm speaking of the neighborhood residential units. Is the reason that building is stepping back because of the solar ordinance?
The wedding cake of that whole elevation is due to be compliant with the specific, of the mathematical specifics of the solar ordinance and the step backs, yes. We could have asked for an exception to that, but we thought this would be a good way to approach the project to have that consistency.
So that step back and so forth could not be shared and equalized on the balance of the right-hand side of this elevation?
Well,
taking some of the units
That portion is circulation and is even much further back. So what you're talking about is that cross opening on the right-hand side of the elevation is actually an entry to the garage. It's much further removed from the property line than the balance of the elevation.
And that's what I'm saying. Could that be much closer to the property lines and provide more mass and more units rather than up along the very restricted property line of the balance of the
We thought a more vegetation and an additional setback there would be preferable for the neighbors. Plus, it worked with the circulation plan, the garage parking, and the way it's only single-loaded units on that side, so.
Okay. Regarding, there's been talk of, and it's on its way, the street tree removal. Can you go broadly over how many trees will be removed, and especially the trees showing up on sheet A5.13? And what other trees will be removed next to your project?
Well, so my understanding is that the only significant street tree that was decided to be removed recently by the Planning Commission because of structural problems with the sidewalks and the roots is that one tree right out in front, and in the updated submission.
Right in front of your elevation?
Yeah, right there.
Not the one to the right?
The one right, in this image right here, the tree right in front of the three arches, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that tree is an existing ficus, and it was very problematic. It has a whole history of problematic issues. So the Planning Commission, separate from this project, removed that specific tree along with several others, and then the city made a recommendation to the landscape architect for the right street tree to be replaced, which then we updated in the submittal package.
And there's no other trees that will be removed?
There are some
along your
smaller ones
property
in
lines?
sight, but all the peripheral.
How many street trees? Street trees?
No other street trees.
Okay. And then if we go to your north elevation again.
A3, 2, there it is.
Yeah. The roof and bridges above the second floor courtyard, it appears that there's no, well, at the roof level, there's no side beams or columns, and at the bridge levels, there's no columns. It's just going to go straight across from building to building?
Crossing that courtyard, in that top elevation, which was the elevation that the PC said, is there anything you to do to make it less blank? So we provided this updated elevation to you. But those bridges you're talking about are on the far side of that courtyard. So you're seeing the north elevation.
I understand.
Okay.
Do you have,
they span,
are you not intending to articulate those with columns or any kind of architecture?
Just moldings and tile caps on the
roof
guardrails.
just goes straight across.
It just goes straight across
Okay,
in
thank
this
you.
illustration.
Those are my questions.
Board Member Black?
I have no questions right now.
Board Member New?
You may have discussed this sometime in the past, but was there a consideration for subterranean parking to pull the height of this down?
It was looked at, geology, water table issues precluded it, flood issues, and also circulation issues on site, because the primary circulation that serves this building was consolidated to one curb cut, consistent with pedestrian policy. So we eliminated any curb cuts on the Milpas frontage and consolidated all the parking into the vehicular alley, which serves the pizza place and Starbucks.
Okay. That's it for now.
Board Member Soffin?
Yeah, I'm just curious, what are the ceiling heights in the units?
9 feet.
And was there any consideration to maybe bring each one down to maybe like 8.6 or something to, again, kind of further alleviate a little bit of that height?
Well, as I stated, the 9 feet allows 8-foot drops for like bathrooms, kitchen areas, so that you can put a fan coil in there. So it's a kind of a balance between the two. And, considering that we wanted to deliver a Mediterranean Spanish-style building with clay tile roofs, roof pitches, we pursued that height. We felt that's a very reasonable height and consistent with most of the housing this board sees. So.
And then looking at the south-facing elevation, I see You've got some, am I right, like open balconies with like open railings?
Yeah, they're on the top. So there's some balconies that are wrought iron work. We felt that, the archway with the balcony centered above the arch and another balcony above that is really classic Mediterranean. You see it on some of the better examples on State Street. You see it in Nice and a lot of the Mediterranean places. So that's a classic response to streetscape frontage. And then there's a variety on the next element to the east. There are also open balconies with the solid balcony above and then the awning. So we try to variegate a variety of language, architectural language, if you will, to break up the consistency and not have a monolithic solution for balconies.
Thank you.
Board Member Anderson?
Yeah, can you flip to the site plan, please? In terms of urban experience, would you say one of these is, what would you say is the primary facade of this building?
Well, given the unique nature of the site, where it actually wraps around two other private properties to have a limited frontage on Milpas and a big frontage on Gutierrez, a bigger frontage, if you will, there really are two distinct frontages. And what I hoped we communicated to you in the simulations and the animation is that you really can almost suggest that this is two separate buildings because the perception of it, depending on where you are, is somewhat limited at any one time or any one point.
Okay. Were there some sort of site circulation or access diagrams that you did at some point that show, one as a pedestrian walking along Milpas and how one would approach one's unit from Milpas, let's say?
Yeah, and that's kind of why, so one of the things working with staff was the importance of this as Milpas as a circulation corridor. So we felt it was really important to create a residential entry and elevator. So the building has two elevators to actually address pedestrian visitation and use from various standpoints. And that also lightens the load of the residents to not a single point. Yeah, so there are two residential lobbies. You can see the two elevator cores, the activity rooms, leasing office on the Gutierrez frontage, but then there's a residential lobby and adjacent commercial space on the Milpas frontage.
Board Member Anderson and to the applicant, if it's helpful, I can pull up the animation again, if that would display it better, or?
It's okay, thanks. Can you also flip to the fourth floor plan? So what is the function of the bridgeway, the free open air breezeway bridge?
On the fourth floor?
Yeah.
So there's actually two there. That one actually links the different floor levels across that courtyard open space. So that blue line represents the common circulation throughout the project on the fourth level. And you can see there's kind of a little plaza in the middle of the opening to the major courtyard there. And then, using that blue circulation, you have to cross the opening, the gap between the forms, the mass of the building. And you have to do that again in the courtyard you asked about on the top as you bridge across. And that's what Commissioner Sticks was suggesting, could use. I'm hearing he thinks it could be more articulated as it spans across there.
And I see you've got the amenity space, it looks like. What's the function of, you've got a pretty large roof terrace, and is that related somehow to the amenity, and why did you place that terrace there?
Well, so one of those is to address the step back, the wedding cake effect on the Milpas Street frontage, and also the functionality of that terrace with those amenity spaces. So if residents want to have a social event, they can have there could be we're planning actually like a small commercial kitchen in that to service the terrace and make use of that for social functions. And the same is true on the terrace on Gutierrez Street.
Okay, can we flip to the Milpas elevation, please?
That would be A3. A3. Okay. Back one. Yeah, so I'm sorry, one more, Beth, my bad. Again, please. Nope, I think we're going, there it is.
Here we go, yeah.
So this is sans vegetation, but if I might leap out of here a little bit. So one of the things that I like in the architecture of this project is the classical nature of the arcade. Planning Commission really seemed to enjoy that too, with the double colonnade and the recess behind the arcade set back are the entrances to the commercial and the residential lobby, but the richness of that tile, the step back and the detailing around those arches are very much what makes a good street scale response to the human scale of that. And that's a device we try to incorporate on all the frontages to give that, kind of architectural richness and scale.
Okay. And so what we're looking at here is the amenity and roof deck, correct? Above?
Above, that is the roof terrace, that's correct.
So what's the height here to the ridge?
So that's typical of all the project height in terms of, it's again a 9-foot ceiling.
No, from average grade plane to the ridge. To the roof ridge.
Yeah, let me give you that. Section. That would be 49 feet, 4 inches.
Okay, so that's consistent, I guess, on all sides of the building, correct? And there's
that roof form, if you go to the roof plan on A25, one more, you could see the gable elements. You can see the gable element that you're asking about on the upper left side there. And just behind that ridge, which is that height I just gave you, that's the ridge right there, there's the mechanical well sunk into the tile roof. And that element is kind of standardized in terms of the module as you move west to east across the building.
Yeah. And what's the max allowable with all the concessions on the project?
With the maximum allowable is 60 feet per city charter and per bonus density, and it's available to us through bonus density concessions, and it's also available through the city charter for a benefit housing project.
Right, yeah. Is there a reason why you kind of spread out the massing throughout the site so much, as opposed to, maybe densifying one area more than the other? For instance, densifying the Milpas side a little bit more than the neighborhood side?
Well, the problem with the Milpas Street side, it's a rather limited width and site area. So if we were going to densify that, we'd be going up above that height restraint, which we didn't feel we could violate.
I thought you said you were at 45 or something now, right?
Right, but to go up an additional story changes a lot of things in terms of circulation, access, stair access. The other thing that I think was really important about the project was, in order to achieve a significant setback to the neighborhood and incorporate open space, the interior courtyard became a really important feature and device to deliver exposed perimeter area and to deliver light and air to the bedrooms and the living spaces of the units. So this gives me a good opportunity to address the livability, because I personally believe that the commissioner perceived that some of our units didn't have windows, when in fact every single unit has either its own private balcony and separate fenestration for a bedroom or the living space when there's two separate rooms. But when it's like a joined space, like a studio or a one-bedroom unit, we try to double the code requirement in terms of big door access to a balcony and an additional window to kind of provide that light and air. So I would argue with anybody, we spent a lot of time crafting the units so that they are, in fact, very livable. And in fact, because we wanted to respond to the Planning Commission's comment about the north elevation having no articulation, we went to the trouble to add some windows to the units that perhaps are the least fenestrated to give additional fenestration on that side.
Okay, what's the width from grid Y10 to Y13? The width of the panhandle of the Milpas portion of the building?
It's like on the order of 50 feet.
Okay. All right. And, broader question, just out of curiosity, in terms of more looking at this project holistically, why this, as opposed to a site downtown, let's say, when you're scoping this project?
Well, I'll take a leap at that, but then I would invite the owner who's been involved with the site for a lot of years. It's unusual when you have about an acre of mostly pavement on a corridor that's designated per the AUD program, and through a long history of a process with the city, with ABR, Planning Commission, public involved at length over many years to designate the Milpas corridor as a high-density overlay for housing. And so this owner, Mr. Bob Ludwig, has been a steward of this site for a long time and has been an advocate delivering good things for the city. And this is kind of what the city has legislated. And, with the state and the urgency for housing, he said we need to deliver a good housing project. And I politely remind everybody here that, this problem exceeds the people in this room. There's a crisis, and I have people that work for me that commute and pay a fortune for housing, and they're all champions to get more housing in this community.
Yeah, I'm just curious because there, in the AUD report in 2023, there's so many sites that have been identified as potential sites, and I'm curious why is, this is a challenging geometry to work with this kind of connector piece into Milpas, and then you've got this kind of almost like this big backyard, right adjacent to a single-family residential area. So I'm just trying to understand the thinking.
I don't think we can question what comes before us and why it came before us.
Well, I'm trying to bring up a conversation about urban design and how, we're being handed a project that's the result of AUD guidelines,
Sure.
And I'm using this as an opportunity to think about, because we are responding to aesthetic issues, but those aesthetic issues are the symptom of,
Sure.
Decisions that are made by the planning department or
Right.
whoever.
Commissioner Anderson, let me add something. So I am friendly with the adjacent owner of the Rusty's Pizza business, and he's also a friend of Bob Ludwig, the client, and he's interested in developing his site. And what I see happening, that I've seen happen in a lot of cities all over the world, is they grow and change with population, and the kind of frontage that I think the community has ordained through lots of work and meetings and hearings is to create a pedestrian frontage that has residential above and has a richness of street life, restaurants, activities on the grade level. That's the trend that I think is going to occur on the sites up and down Milpas. Some are more available because of the ownership situations. All these things are complicated by, life, people owning, families, people dying, transferring real estate. But this is an opportunity that he's cultivated over a long time. And we've studied the policies and the guidelines. We think this is what the city needs, and we're excited about it. We worked for many years to get to this point with this board.
I just add one other thing, I think I hear what your question is, as far as thinking about what's appropriate for this site. And one thing we haven't noted is the AUD ordinance allows average unit size over 800 square feet. And we have we're in the 600, low 600s. And that's another attempt to kind of, I understand people think that it's massive, but it's actually it could be a lot larger, and even under the city's own AUD. And so I think that's a reflection of the owner's belief that they wanted to propose something that was more compatible as possible, given also the mandate for housing and the city's designation of this as an AUD.
You know, there's one other point, too, that I touched on, and that is the fact that now the city has a new policy, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with, the objective design standards, and it allows applicants on new project that are not builder's remedy or weren't filed like this one was before that objective standard came. But if you look at the objective standard for height and mass on that property line, this is essentially consistent with it for step back, mass, and you know, that program, I understand, it allows an applicant to come forward and avoid the design review process. And so, you know, we were asked to study that just as a consideration, and Beth pointed out to me, she says, Jen, this project doesn't need to comply with the objective design standards. But I think it's important for the board to understand that for most part, it does. And that's kind of the latest city's take on delivering housing to the city.
Any other questions?
Well, I think what I was really asking is, you know, in the beginning of this, you know, why not a site downtown?
Well, we can't ask that question.
Board
Well,
Member
I'm
Anderson, that's
asking
outside of ABR's purview.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to go by
Well,
what's in front of us.
There are sites coming on downtown, a lot of them, so everywhere in the city that's mapped for this kind of project.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think that's it for now.
Okay, I have a few. Are you required to do solar panels with this project?
We have to, my understanding is that we've got to provide PV space to the degree we can.
Okay, got it. Okay, then, since we're looking at this right here, what you can see from the roof plan is down to the podium level or second floor.
Correct.
And then, did you consider aligning that open space with your, like, all the way through to the east side to allow more light to spill into the neighborhood and still get your count?
Well, that was a circulation issue, but if you notice, we took down the story right in the middle facing that neighborhood so that there's only 2 stories above the podium, splitting the mass right where you're suggesting.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could align them and get light all the way through.
Yeah, it would really result, if we could drop that mass all the way down, it would result in losing units.
It would, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, in regards to the commercial space that's part of this project, it's only on the Milpas side.
Correct.
Is that correct? Was there consideration to add some on Gutierrez?
We took that opportunity because, you know, commercial space is challenging in the city right now. There's a lot of vacancies.
True.
There's a lot of need. So these projects, in my experience, work really well when you provide significant amenities. So having another residential lobby, bike storage, leasing office, activity, meeting room is what kind of enriches that streetscape.
Okay, those are my only questions. Follow-up? Yeah.
I have one little gray mouse question rather than a white elephant. Can we go to the front? Let's go to this section, Mr. Hockhauser.
A4 series.
The section through the Milpas mass.
Keep going. There it is, back
Yeah.
right there on the left
Yeah,
side.
lower, very left hand. Did you consider a mansard roof rather than a straight-up balcony edge to that 4th floor open area? No, down, right? Yeah, just a little to the left. There you go. So, you know, that mansard could be even lower than the roof, the floor level.
Well, so Commissioner Sticks, the blue space right below that roof terrace, right? You're suggesting compromising the volume?
No, I'm not.
Or just a little mansard at the parapet?
Mansard, just at the building wall, front building wall of that unit, and extending out to somewhere above the balcony railing.
So if I understand you correctly, like a small mansard element instead of from the head height of the opening. I looked at that. I really feel like that classical Mediterranean with the cornice and the archways is really germane to some great examples in State Street and also, a lot of European cities.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I had a quick follow-up. In your programming, do you find that this, I understand the amenity space on the ground level, but to have it on the third level, do you find that that's beneficial to the project, to these projects?
Yeah, I think distributing it around for all levels of social interaction is really good. There are small intimate groups and then there are large meeting groups. And one of the things that I feel, and I hope you guys agree with me, is that residential units on public frontages are a challenge. Like you don't want to put residential units right on the sidewalk. Those are privacy issues. It's kind of invasive. So, in LA and San Francisco, activating that streetscape frontage is kind of like a watchword for, policy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was only referring to the one on the third floor, the space on the third floor. That's it.
Okay, next.
I've got just one question. I'm just curious, is there any thought or planning to sort of like Uber drop-offs, pickups, like Amazon, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we spent a good deal of time with transportation. So one of the issues that came up, and Kathleen will enjoy this discussion because we talked about it at length, was how do we address like a delivery truck and big moving trucks and semis. And so the reality is like delivering a semi truck to the site was just a non-starter with the podium design and all that. So working with Marburg and city transportation, we decided that there would be some kind of loading space, drop-off space that you're talking about close to the residential lobby on Gutierrez Street. And then we also provided a van scale loading space for more permanent loading designated on one of the parking spots.
Great, thank you.
And then on the second, third, and fourth floor, are the circulation in blue, is that all conditioned space?
No, it's not. It goes indoor, outdoor, depending on where you are. So sometimes it's a single-sided outdoor balcony, and sometimes it's a double-loaded corridor. You can see on the east there that it's serving two sides, units on both sides, and then on the west wing, it's open.
Okay. Okay, let's go into comments. Who would like to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
I think, it's definitely clear that you guys have done a lot of work here and really appreciate that you have not tried to max out, and push everything to the limit. I think that I do see that there has been a lot of neighborhood consideration. And, the AUD thing is here. It's not us. This is state level that's forcing this to happen. So I think, with other projects that I've seen come here that are really trying to max it out, I do appreciate and see consideration for the neighborhood. I would love to see some more effort put into the fenestration and the exterior elements to maybe make it seem, to add more character to the structure, to add a little bit of time to its presence to the neighborhood. I think you've got a really great start, and I think that with some more work, and I'd like to see a lot of doors and windows on the exterior lined up, and maybe there's a way to break that up a little bit while still preserving, the flow that you're trying to achieve to do what you're doing. So thank you.
Board Member 6?
Yes, thank you, Chair Anderson. Well, just for you to remember where I'm coming from, I said in the last review that the project needed to be half the height and half the footprint. My fractions were not literal, but an indication of where the scale of reduction that was required to consider this compatible. I've been on the board for 12 years now. And I think that I have the responsibility to uphold the guidelines and the basic core job that this board has. And to say that this is compatible with the neighborhood is just not part of reality. I will not be able to make compatible findings. I don't care whether this creates a difficulty with legal and so forth. I think the city is already in trouble with indicating the density masses along Milpas without providing any thought for infrastructure or parking or all the other issues that are mentioned. So I feel that I can't see any mass relocations or other tricks to disguise the size of this building. And, we were told that we could only deny this building by aesthetics, but I disagree. A big part of the aesthetics is size, mass, bulk, and scale. And I don't see how we get there from here. One rationale, I think that Planning Commissioner Wiscombe alluded to, that larger projects in smaller scaled areas could, the areas would be in transition and will catch up to the new scale. Well, I don't believe this is workable on Milpas. I think that we have 701 Milpas already, and more like this will disrupt the fabric of Milpas for so very, very far into the future that it's just unacceptable. And it will gridlock the infrastructure such as parking and traffic as mentioned. I think before the community, that the fabric of Milpas catches up, I hope that we have a different economic and political model to increase housing that encourages more reasonable development on properties. Second, the Milpas-Haley guidelines is very outdated, poorly written, but its photos speak thousands of words. It speaks of a humble, simple, informal language. I don't see this flavor in this design. For instance, the Milpas front elevation, it's formal, stiff, it's formal in its organization. It has elaborate trim at its arches, not simple. Short columns that are not simple of a humble solution. And this language is repeated in many other elevations of the project. There is a stiffness of formality throughout. I think, I'm not as crass to say that this is an institutional prison, but I think that's what's happening here. It's so stiff and formal throughout that it begins to read that way. And let me be specific on things that are contributing to that. First of all, the balcony parapets, as we mentioned, the front of Milpas, are continuous. There's no articulation. Look at the Haley Milpas photos. They always have some kind of little, raised articulation at the corners or at intervals. All of your parapets are straight and uninteresting and stiff. The same with the eaves. All of them are molding. There's no changes to overhangs, no interruptions, of any sort. The tower is very formal. It's strict symmetry on all prominent sides. The square windows don't help. You know, there's a rule of traditional proportions to windows that work in Spanish vocabulary. You've got these square windows places that just sense of a stiffness and a formality that is not reflective of the Milpas guidelines. There are all of your openings, such as the larger openings to the garage and others, are just very plain rectangular openings. There's no inline corbelling at the corners or, you know, any articulation whatsoever of those. And when you do have articulations on the Gutierrez and Milpas, they're all very formal and not in the spirit of the casual, humble Milpas guidelines. The formal four-pointed stars at the gables are, you know, the Milpas guidelines would have a simple opening of some sort, just very simple and underplayed. The overhang next to the garage entry, the bottom of that overhang is just straight. There's an opportunity for scallops or corbels. You know, again, that relaxed, informal feeling that is part of this community. As I mentioned, the roof and bridge over Milpas needs to have, you know, articulation. You know, it's a very modern, straight, no columns, no beams, no articulation whatsoever. All of they're throughout the projects, they're above windows and between these balcony parapets and so forth. There's very heavy, fully classic moldings, not part of what we want to see as a relaxed, simple design. There's something about the wrought iron design that's very formal with the large or simple railings and a little bit of detail within that, but it comes off as stiff. And, you know, I think that there's other concerns that even the Planning Commission looked at. The tower is too broad, the north wall is too plain. Now, I think lastly, on style, I think there was missed opportunity, and I wish you look at this on the frontage, the Milpas frontage, especially the front three-story mass. You started to articulate it from the back of the Milpas project, but it could be a completely different style to help bring down the apparent mass of this. For example, this mass could be sheathed in a convincing used brick veneer and brick detailing, such as the building at the corner of Haley and Milpas, or even better, 14 North Milpas. My last comment is story poles. There is just too much public concern for this board to deny the community to see story poles. The poles and ridge strings should be accurate and not simply 4 to 5 as suggested by Mr. Planning Commissioner Barnwell. Those are my comments.
Vice Chair Whalen?
Thank you, Chair Anderson. I'm going to reiterate some of what Member 6 said and maybe disagree with a few things, but overall, it's a terribly complicated site, so I appreciate you giving all of your talents and best efforts to it, but it does have different conditions on Milpas than it does on Gutierrez. I think a different expression of those two parts would be in order rather than reiterative. But in general, some of the architectural details have a high degree of expression, but the overall massing, to my mind, does appear random and results in a bulky and unwieldy mass that really, honestly, is out of scale with the neighborhood and the livability. And like Member 6 said, alls I have are the guidelines for the ABR and the Haley Milpas. So I fortunately don't have to pay attention to state law in our comments. We're just going to try to make a better building with what you've offered us. And in fact, I think the site is overbuilt, but we have to get beyond that. The proposal does very little to preserve or respect the neighborhood character. The massing overwhelms the adjacent buildings, but then it can do that. So that's a given. So getting back to some of the details that we might offer to make it a better building. So let's start with that north elevation, which has been of concern to many people. Now, I know since you went to Planning Commission, you added some windows. I think this is for the memory of our former board member, Leon Olson. It's a perfect opportunity for some murals. And in that mind, it might just have moldings or recesses, something to break up that facade. You might even consider changing the ends of the roof to a gable to reduce that mass.
Then they would violate the solar ordinance.
Well, I would think that that would increase the solar gain.
Well, the reason they're all sheds on the north elevation or the east elevation?
Pardon the interruption. Your microphone's not on, but the chair
Right.
may allow you to speak
Well,
since
we're-
it's still in
let's-
comments.
yeah, let's
We
just
won't
let him
get
do his
into it.
comments.
You can respond later on if the chair, but something to reduce that impact of that huge north end. If you could go to your A34, that's the Milpas elevation. This is where I might disagree with Member 6. I find that rather a handsome elevation fronting on State Street. Where I have a problem with is everything else behind it. That's where I think many of the public comments about the institutional look of it come into play. You've added on a section there to try to break it up. What I really don't understand is the fenestration for the corridors. That could really become a lively element. Right now, it's one of the least attractive things about the building, along with, as Member 6 said, the garage openings. This view that we get deep into the site, which may or may not change over time. We have to operate for today. And that elevation, that would be the southern portion of the elevation, I would think could use some of your considerable talents, especially in that hallway fenestration. The courtyard, to my way of thinking, is the heart of this building. And if you could go to your section through that, if I understand, Mr. Hockhauser, the balconies that project into it are all stacked. So those on the podium level are really prohibited from getting a lot of light and sun and air, the way I see it. So perhaps alternating rather than rigorously stacking all those balconies, you might alter them or somehow allow for more natural light and ventilation to pierce all the way down in there, because it is kind of a narrow air shaft space. And if you were truly wondrous, you could find some way of wedding cake stacking them back to really allow more light and air. But I realize that may be out of the question to do, but it would really make that heart of the building come alive. Whereas now, to my mind, it's just kind of a token space. And I would appreciate more of your talents being applied to rendering that in a way that bespeaks the heart of the building rather than just, well, this is the leftover space. One of the least attractive things about this, and I'm not sure we can even comment on the interior, but are these long hallways, which to me are an anathema to habitability and neighborly, even if the doorways were recessed to some degree. You see this in hotels, and or the doors were staggered, or where doors faced one another, there was a little expansion space, a little breathing space, something to break up these unyielding, unending corridors. And this relates back to the livability, although I'm not sure we can comment on interior elements, but you may want to consider that. I agree with member 6 about the tower and also the planning commissioner meetings. We thought it was a little chunky. If you look at the illustrations on the back of the Gebhard room, there's some lovely towers, and they all have kind of a grace and airiness about them. Your tower looks rather 1940s colonial revival rather than, well, we're not Spanish colonial over here. We're Mediterranean Pueblo. I don't think Pueblos really have bell towers, but a few of the churches do. And coming to the end of my comments here, where's the poetry? Now, some of the massing, especially on the smaller Milpas wing, seems to hang together when I think of a European church complex that sits in the middle of a city. There are different massing elements, and I can almost see that in this building. And I would encourage you to think about the story that it is you want to tell with this building. What does this building want to tell the neighborhood about who it is and its place in the neighborhood? Right now, as you could tell from the public comment, people they didn't want to go to this church. So what is the building that they would embrace? And that, again, I can't give you specifics, but it's the poetry that we enjoy here in Santa Barbara and try to live up to. Oh, finally, I really appreciate your LiDAR renderings. I thought they were very revealing. If you could expand on those so that the LiDAR looked around at what was on the other side of the street, what was catty corner on the Milpas Gutierrez intersection, I would, and then told this story about how this building relates to the neighborhood. I would wish you better luck and better will with this project. That's all I have. Thank you.
Board Member Black.
I think I'm just going to defer to the architects on the board, and I think there have been some comments that I would agree with, some probably not as much, but I'm just going to defer comments.
Board Member Noon.
Thank you. I'll just add a couple things. I think both board members have already, or all three that have commented, have done so appropriately. I wouldn't deviate from that. I do think that in places where we can, look at the mass, like those amenity spaces that I mentioned, without reducing units. I know that's a program thing. You're the designer. You've got the owner that's got a desire. But if there are ways with that, because the community is full of amenities, right? That I guess that's one thing I would add, and I would reiterate just the softness. I wrote down simple and softness of the architecture. I think it's already been articulated well from the other board members, but I would feel the same. Thanks.
Board Member Anderson.
I think the massing of the building is kind of a result of a lack of site analysis, and more efficient site planning could be done in the site plan and in the floor plans. I think the floor plans are also a little inefficient. For example, the bridge space or the amenity space, the geometry, the terrace, they all kind of seem to be, in my view, a legacy from when this project may have been programmed as a hotel. I also think the geometry of this site, you know, that's what you have to work with as the owner and the designer. That's on you guys to do this site analysis to make the architecture work with those constraints. I think the volume of mass that flanks the adjacent neighborhood could be mitigated with a little bit more efficient planning. I think if you're gonna go up, the Milpas Street side is the side to put density on. And I think that, you know, the second board member, Whelan's comments on the elevation, that elevation on Milpas really doesn't look that bad in my opinion. It has a nice quality to it. It's very simple. The lines are pretty clean and it's pretty legible. So, you know, I think that as an idea about architecture could begin to inform the language of the rest of the project. I think the rest of the architecture is kind of muddy in what exactly it wants to be, and also just the volume of it. I think it feels a little unbalanced, the distribution of the volume, how spread out it is across the site, and how, you know, you go from this 4-story mass to a single family neighborhood. It is jarring, and I think that that would, you know, feel uncomfortable in terms of the urban experience of that space. I also think it's a lost opportunity to not, if we're going to strategically densify the Milpas corridor, then that's where we need to look at opportunity for density and building vertically. And that's where the street frontage should be understood in terms of urban experience. Because that that doesn't seem to appear in the site planning of this project, I think that's how we end up with the kind of jumbo building that has, you know, such a blank and tall facade, the north facade or the neighborhood facade, and that's what makes it feel so big in its context. So I think the site analysis needs to be done a little bit more to understand how, you know, if you're gonna conceive of this building as 2 separate buildings, as I've heard it said, then, you know, maybe the Milpas building is the vertical building and the rest of the site is the low-rise horizontal building. In terms of the architectural language, I think that it's kind of a little busy for my taste with both the white plaster and the tan. I don't know why. I don't feel that adds anything to the architecture. I think it could just all be white plaster, and that would help simplify the facade. And I also think that the terracotta roof is actually making the building feel bigger because of the ridge height on the roof. And one of the things I like is the deep set windows and the feeling of an arcade or a colonnade. So yeah, those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. And to follow up, I have similar reactions to the rest of the board as far as the architectural style. I think it would be interesting to consider the Milpas building as something separate and maybe a different color, different material. It would help with the scale of the project, at least the feeling of it. I would consider on the second floor flipping the 2 units that overhang the driveway entrance the other way and putting the circulation on the outside, so you could do some sort of open colonnade or articulate the fenestration on that side. And in doing so, it would bring detail to the elevation, but also a little bit more of the humble and the quiet and the poetry that everyone's describing for the style. I would consider breaking up the continuity of the tile roof. This isn't the best section to look at, but if anywhere there's like that long linear line.
Elevation facing your neighbors, that's the biggest continuity.
Sure. So as it's been said, so the long linear lines, if there's ways to break that up, it's going to help reduce the appearance and the feeling of the mass. Same with lining up all the balconies, same with how you're articulating all the openings. I think on the Milpas elevation, I would just consider on the third floor doing something different with the balconies than you doing on the second floor, maybe stepping those back. I don't think every balcony needs to be an actual balcony. I think it could be inset where you can do that and don't lose a unit. I think what would have been helpful for this round in order to give project design approval would just have been a material board with some of these ideas that you're describing, but that we don't clearly see in the renderings or the elevations. For example, like this tile that you're talking about on the Milpas, I'm just talking about a one page, like tile, wrought iron, plaster color, tile roof, light fixture. Like we haven't even looked at light fixtures where that is. I would consider on the Milpas elevation too. I feel like the columns are a bit chunky, and I would just refine that. And yeah, I think just throughout it's coming back to humble, simple, good proportions, fine tuning the detailing. Even just providing one detail that's like, this is our door and window detail. We're recessing all of the doors and windows with the plaster. I think all of that would be helpful. I'm not sure the awnings add anything to your case. I would consider something else with that. And then on the Gutierrez elevation, unfortunately, it feels a bit like the CVS that's next to it. So I would consider articulating that as well. Okay, so they are here for project design approval. We had 3 options given to us. Project design approval with specific conditions, a continuance to April 14th with specific comments, or a one-time 90-day extension. So let's make a motion, and then we will talk to the applicant after a motion's made on what would be the best direction. So who would like to make a motion?
Well, a question, Chair Anderson, to staff. What does the 90-day extension actually turn out to be? I mean, what happens?
So during that time, the applicant could take advantage of addressing some of your comments. So it's an extension that they would grant if they want to, not you. It would be, yeah, if they want to, because there's a requirement from when they were deemed complete that we need to have project design approval.
So more accurately, we have 2 choices, if I understand you correctly, unless you default to number 3.
Correct.
Okay, I'm on board now.
Can I ask a question then?
Yeah.
So then, do we want to ask the applicant the question? Would they want the 90-day extension?
I think we need to make a motion on whether we're giving design approval or not,
Okay, so the motion will just be like a vote of design approval or not, and then,
or indefinite continuance.
okay,
And then,
Chair Anderson, it would need to be to a date certain.
okay,
to the 14th, right?
got it.
Well, then, in that case, I'll make a motion that we have an indefinite or a continuance to April 14th for the applicant to return with response to comments.
That would be appropriate unless the applicant agreed to the extension, and perhaps we could take a 2-minute recess and staff could discuss with the applicant outside,
And
if that's okay.
if it's even necessary, I feel that it's not ready for project design approval.
Okay, let's take a
Do I
2-minute
have a
recess.
seconder? Anyone want a second?
Second.
Okay. All right. We'll take a 2-minute recess. So the motion on the floor is,
Chair Anderson, if I may, in discussing with the applicant, in your motion, if you could continue to a date certain of April 14th, include as many specific comments as you can for items they can address and improve the design. And yeah, that would be the motion as discussed with the applicant.
Yeah, thank you for wishing me good luck because it was my motion. So I'll continue the item to the April 14th meeting and to address the following issues. The fenestration around the building should be a more variety, perhaps using surrounds and recesses and more of the character stated in the Milpas Haley design guidelines. Help me out here, folks. What am I missing? Something with landscape, Mr. Black?
I don't think that's an issue right now.
No, our open space.
I think there was a consensus that the project architecture needed to be more simple, softer, humble, whether, the size of building to be humble, but anyway, more softness.
Yes, as reflected in the Milpas Haley design guidelines, illustrations, those photographs.
What about the site planning and the differentiation of maybe two buildings, one vertical, one horizontal, or two different architectures or somehow different?
Yes. The massing of the project to be expressed in different distinct volumes that have individual characteristics.
I have a problem with that. They have maxed out the airspace of this. There's no wiggle room to replan, and there is surface variations of that front Milpas, but I think that's to talk about site redesign and so forth. It's not going to happen. It's full to its envelope.
I don't think that's true, though. They're at 45, right? So you can go to 60 on per the thing, right?
Pardon the interruption. If Board Member Whalen can finish his motion and then under discussion, we can get into this. Thank you.
Well, let's see, the only other comment I would include is that the openings to the parking have more of an expression rather than just being cut out rectilinear. They have corbels or something that adds to the character of the building.
Commissioner Whalen, may I?
put your mic on.
I think that Commissioner Whalen, I believe, were you the one who brought up also on the north facade, sort of maybe adding some more articulation or suggestion of.
Oh, yes, thank you, Member Sofrin. On the north facade, to relieve some of the blank expanses, that reveals be added with the possibility of adding murals. And I misspoke, I said gable, I meant hip to reduce, just something to reduce the impact of that. What was yours?
I don't know.
On the linear.
Oh, yeah. Except your plan here, I think he's referring to the north that's on
The
that.
north.
Okay, not east, okay.
Yeah.
got it.
So,
Can we add a material board? with
oh, sure,
intentions?
and the project return with a material board that talks about those things used, that the roof tiles, the type of plaster, the colors that are proposed.
Can we also, I don't know if it was mentioned, there was the recommendation for maybe not having all the balconies be the same, but trying to differentiate, do some recess, do some projection, explore the awnings. And there was also a suggestion for, I believe, you'd recommended something about when you first drop people off, a suggestion of evaluating
Well, my comment was regarding the second floor plan and flipping 2 units the other way and creating a colonnade on the corridor. It's just, it was just a thought, not a,
Some articulation with the bridge.
or maybe it's not the second floor, maybe it's the third floor? No, second floor, right there. No, no, not those.
I'm agreeable to Member
Anyways.
Sofrin's
Yeah,
comments.
No.
I think the bridge and its roof over needs more articulation. There was a comment about the broadness and symmetry of the tower.
Yes, to re-examine the dimensions or study the dimensions of the tower so that it isn't as heavy, perhaps lighter in character. Yeah. That's sufficient. We still need a second, don't we?
Second.
There it is.
Chair Anderson, could you add story poles to that as well?
I am in favor of story poles. Yes, I would add that to the motion.
I am not in favor of story pools, but I do think your fly-through was like, 20 feet high instead of at a car level.
I'll check that.
It looked like you were looking down on cars. But we can do a straw vote regarding story poles. So I guess raise your hand if you want story poles. 3? Okay, does not, I know, does not pass. No story poles.
All right, so do we have our motion then?
All right, we will take a vote. Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Whalen,
Yes?
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Six,
No.
Board Member Sovereign,
Yes.
motion passes. Board Member Six, could you please,
Yes, the reasons are twofold. I think that the community deserves story poles, and second and most important, I don't think the suggestions articulated in the motion are grand enough to resolve the size, mass, and scale issue of this project.
Okay, thank you. We will see you on April 14th. And I believe Vice Chair Whalen had a comment that we missed earlier.
I just wanted to announce to my fellow board members that the Planning Commission will have a site walk for the Sears site this Thursday morning at 8 o'clock, if you can bear to make it. That project will be coming to us in the very near future, and it might behoove you to walk it. We aren't allowed to participate, but we are allowed to attend. And it's a very difficult site, so I would encourage you all, if you don't make that meeting, be sure and walk your dog around the site.
Okay. All right, thank you. And we will adjourn our meeting, ABR meeting for Tuesday, April 1st. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan.